All right. So, me and Kyle thought it would be fun to sort of, since we reacted to every death battle that came out this season, we thought it'd be kind of fun to do a recap at the end of the year over most of the death battles that came out, and see if our thoughts have changed or anything of that nature, or just talking about them in general. So we're starting with Bardock versus Omni Man. So do
To
you want?
add a little bit
Go ahead.
extra, this is just something fun to come out for around the holidays. But at the same time, we'll be mostly taking into account their own research and their own reasonings. But if we do know things about the characters, we will be interjecting our own knowledge as well.
Yes, that is correct. So, starting with Omni Man versus Bardock, which
Okay, so
actually
do you
was a
want to
very
start?
controversial death battle when it came out.
So do you want to start? Okay, so how about we say individually who we think won, and then we'll like go over their reasonings, like not our reasonings, but Death Battle's reasonings, and see if we
Yes.
agree.
So Death Battle presented the position that Omni Man wins this matchup. They did allow Bardock to have all filler relevant scenes, which whether or not they would scale the Bardock is very debatable even at that point. But yeah, so they gave Omni Man the win due to the very controversial Sun Disk scaling and also being able to survive longer and have better durability and better stamina overall. I believe it was 2 to 3 in the categories.
Bardock's
Yes.
Yes, and for some reason they've always had a hard on for fucking experience. Don't know why. Don't know why.
Only when the matchup calls for it, apparently.
Only when it calls for it.
But so okay, yeah. So how familiar? Well, I guess give your thoughts on it. The animation. We didn't rewatch the fight, but you remember how the fight went for this one, right? Or do you need a
Uh,
quick?
we don't need to watch the fights. We only care about like their reasonings.
Yeah.
So I know that I was very diametrically opposed to everyone who watched this when I say this. I think they got the result right. But what a lot of people seem to forget when they try and rep Bardock, the reason he got as far as he did is because they are scaling him to a lot of filler material that does not happen, like Goku dodging meteors on the way to Namek. And that's even if you think he would even scale to that in the first place. And King Vegeta blowing up 3 planets, which again is also another anime exclusive scene, which gets very iffy because from what we know of King Vegeta and their powers, shouldn't even be remotely that strong by that point, because I think that would like put him above First Form Frieza's power, wouldn't it?
So First Form Frieza had to charge up a massive ki blast to destroy the planet Vegeta. Unless he would have
You say
simply
charged up. You say charged up. Supernova is not that long of a charge up.
it's not a long charge up, but it's still a massive ball of energy, and it barely destroyed one planet.
Well, it's you also have to factor in that like Planet Vegeta kind of has like a gravitational binding energy of like a star. But other than that, Bardock still outrightly always loses and dies to Frieza, even if you want to say that he's weaker. It would not matter. He would still scale weaker than First Form Frieza, and it gets kind of weird trying to scale Bardock.
Yes, so Goku in the spaceship should theoretically not only be stronger than Bardock, but he would be weaker than First Form Frieza by a massive margin. So I guess that's where Death Battle's logic came from for the speed scaling. Because Super Saiyan Bardock would be stronger than Goku on Namek prior to becoming Super Saiyan. So no, oh, actually
What,
no.
the problem is, would he? Because you need to try and find where base Bardock sat before he got Super Saiyan.
There is a statement. I forgot where it was, but I remember his power level was in the 10,000 range, which doesn't make sense because he's a low class warrior but I think the only time outside of Super they gave him a power level, it was 10,000. So he would still be weaker than First Form Frieza with Super Saiyan, actually.
Well, even without Super Saiyan, that would basically make him around Vegeta during the Saiyan saga, because Vegeta was kind of shitting bricks that a low class Saiyan warrior like Goku had 8,000.
No, he was shitting bricks at no. He I think 24,000 is when he got absurd. He is surprised Goku got that much stronger, but that's because I think Nappa's power level is 8,000 canonically. It might be 6,000 actually. Vegeta's is 18. Regardless, so Bardock got a lot of leeway, but this is where it gets kind of fun. Because even though Bardock got leeway, Omni-Man also got a metric fuck ton of leeway in this matchup. Because they referenced the Sun Disk and the Viltrumite planet. Everyone pointed out after this death battle that it is stated in Invincible that if they were any slower at following the laser beam that had already opened a hole in the Viltrumite homeworld, which is the planet busting feat they reference, they would have been killed hitting the core of the planet.
Mm.
So the only planet busting feat they quote unquote have, lore wise, is stated to kill them if they were any slower, because they don't puncture the planet of their own strength. I don't know if you remember this from Invincible, but the I think it's like the Space Rider dude shoots the planet with his laser.
From what I remember, from what I remember, it took the Space Rider's laser and also Alan, Invincible, and Omni Man.
Yes. So whether or not you would even scale it to Omni Man on his own is like a little questionable, but that depends how you want to argue
The
team
problem,
effort.
the problem you have in the end is that Bardock has a speed feat that you should just not remotely give him whatsoever. And even if you scale him above Goku during the, let's be generous and let's say even like after the Genyu fight, by all rights, he would still be slower than Omni Man's reaction and travel speed. So you have a situation where AP and speed switch, and it's at the point where Bardock would never be able to catch Omni Man. Like even though it's over time acceleration, from what I understand, the principle would still stand.
Yes, for the most part. Regardless, Omni Man should have taken this matchup because Bardock was given so much filler content. Because even Super Saiyan is a filler movie added edition.
I think it's the only. Actually, it's that and the one that has Orange Piccolo that I haven't seen.
Yes. But overall, this was the first death battle they used to show they're back in business. And it was a solid. It was like a 7. It might have been a 6 out of 10 at the time. I think it's still a 6 out of 10. It wasn't very good. All right. Any final thoughts, or are we called there on this one?
Only time will tell whether or not the animated series changes the Viltrumite plant busting feat.
True. But let us continue then. So we just got done covering Omni-Man versus Bardock, and Kyle was reunited with his favorite death battle, Joker versus Giorno.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's start off with if I think they got the result right. No. They gave so many concessions to Giorno that it's not funny.
That is true.
So where do you want to start with this?
Okay, well, so let me mute the video, and we'll go back a little bit because we can actually take it step by step, because thankfully for this death battle, they were aware that AP stat wise and everything, it's really not a match. The match is Requiem versus Giorno. And that is correct. I don't care what anyone says about JoJo scaling. You can argue Persona is far superior in all stats to JoJo's, or would you disagree?
So normal goal experience. What they should have done is they should have done Arsene versus Goal Experience, and then they should have done Centennial versus Requiem.
Hang on. Sorry, trying to dinner. But doesn't Giorno canonically have other personas, even in the manga and the anime? Not Giorno. Joker.
I'm sorry, what? Does
Doesn't
Giorno have
Joker
what?
doesn't Joker canonically have other personas in both the anime and the manga?
Yes, he has the wild card.
So wouldn't
But
it be unfair to limit him to
no,
one
no,
persona?
no. So you can give him all the personas you want, but Centennial is basically when Arsene breaks the chains and evolves.
Okay.
But this is also a massive problem that they had that they didn't say, is that they said, "Oh, we're going to give him Sinful Shell." It's like, you mean the technique that he gets? Because I know in this research thing they say that Sentinel is like the size of a building to fight Yaldabaoth. You mean that power up that he got, and he would only ever get because he was powered up by the collective unconscious? Not what would canonically be happening, which is like Sentinel being the same size as every other persona.
Yeah, they do. They do get into amps quite a bit, but so shadows and demons sharing many of the same attributes as stands, you had no issue with, right?
Yes and no. So shadows are the collective unconscious, and so are personas. They're basically the flip side of that, which is not the same as stands, which are, oh god, depending on what part you're in, they're either willpower or souls.
Let's just say
But
willpower.
but them saying that Joker could see goal experience, absolutely correct. The third eye ability does allow you to see invisible objects, so that's completely fine. But you have to continuously keep holding it to see the invisible objects. It's not a passive.
Okay. Oh, here we go. No, that was
Before anyone says like, "Oh, you're fucking biased," I love Persona 5. I've almost platted Persona 5, and I have both versions of the fucking game. Atlas has sucked my money away with this fucking game. I don't want to hear it.
so. Let's start with one of the first win cons they gave Joker. Almighty attacks. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yes. So the problem with Almighty attacks and trying to scale in the Lucifer is that not everyone who uses an Almighty attack scales the same. So by their logic, because characters like Satan have Almighty attacks, and if you're gonna go that route, you might as well just say that like characters have beaten people who can take hits from Almighty attacks, so they should scale to like the rest of the fucking SMT verse, which gets them to like whatever level you think SMT sits. No. All we know that Almighty does is that it doesn't have any kind of element to it, so it can bypass all elements and all defense. That's all we know about it.
So you would argue that each Almighty attack individually would have its own special properties, presumably?
It would scale to the individual, not collectively. This would be the equivalent of like saying, well, this character has the fire spell, therefore this should scale to the fire spell in all of SMT. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a disingenuous take. It's a bit of a piss take, actually.
So their position was there is an Almighty attack that states it warps reality. And their position was that because an Almighty attack can warp reality, that Almighty can bypass. Okay, actually, let me clarify because I just got to the scan they reference. So this is an SMT scan, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong
No.
about that.
No, I think this is from. I'm not sure. It looks like Persona.
Okay, so let's assume it's Persona 1 or 2.
It's basically the omnipotent orb, an orb that bends the laws of the universe. The problem with saying that bends the laws of the universe is that's super vague, and you need to extrapolate that to such an extent to get it to basically ignore Goal Experience Requiem. But there's also the other thing that they say is that like they can move in the Velvet Room. Velvet Room exists outside of time and space. The Velvet Room does many things. Basically, speed and AP are the same for Gold Experience Requiem and for Giorno, because both would be Uni Plus and both would be inaccessible given the feed. Because again, Gold Experience Requiem can move within a race time. So both would scale equally to AP and speed. The problem with them trying to say that like the Velvet Room could save Ren, and by pulling him in is that like one, no, you have to either go to you have to go to a door, or Igor has to pull you in himself, or one of the Velvet Room assistants needs to pull you in.
So how did this work in Persona 5?
So, because the collective unconscious forgot about the Phantom Thieves, they were about to fade from existence. And Lavenza, well, not Lavenza at the time, but you're basically pulled into the Velvet Room, so you don't get erased.
Well, what I'm asking is, who pulled you in? Like, was it Igor or was it the like how did they get pulled in? Because I'm assuming that's what Death Battle's arguing is a similar situation.
I'm trying to think. Collective unconscious.
Which
Mementos is. Hang on. Mementos is merging with the planet. Oh fuck!
to be
I might be
clear,
wrong. I might be wrong on the character. I think it's Lavenza. I think Lavenza pulls you in because she's the Velvet Room assistant. Because I'm pretty sure they merged Justine and Caroline.
I'm gonna give a hot take here. I don't think the Velvet Room should even be accessible for this matchup. Not only does it not belong to any of the Persona protagonists, it's not their realm either. They also can't get there of their own free will. They have to go to a specific area on all the maps. The Velvet Room should not be even considered for a matchup like this.
Yeah, correct. But the biggest thing that they say as well is that, like, well, this orb allows him to beat the Fate hacks. It's like, yeah, okay. Let's say that I grant you that and say that, like, he has other skins that stop, like, willpower manipulation. What about the other one? Because this is what people seem to forget. Gold Experience Requiem has two main abilities outside of its regular Gold Experience abilities. It has the ability to revert all attacks to 0, and it can. What's the other one? Can you go? Can you go back to the Requiem scan?
Hang on, I'm trying to find it real fast. While that's going on, and I don't know if Kyle's going to segue into this, but while we're checking to see for that scan, this is also under the impression that Giorno would fire an almighty attack at the start of the fight. Because if the fight goes on long enough, there's a chance you could argue Requiem would stop him from swapping personas.
Yes, that's actually true. It doesn't matter what, like, once Giorno turns into Requiem, like, once Giorno activates Requiem, whatever persona Joker has at the time, he's fucking locked into it. Because he'll just revert the action to 0.
Keep in mind, that's assuming Joker could even react, since technically...
That's it, I remember. It's actions and willpower. They talk about reverting the willpower to 0 and getting past the willpower manipulation. but they never specifically talk about the second ability of reverting all actions to zero. To get past Requiem, you have to get past both of those abilities. And from their own research and from everything they provide, the only thing they provide is willpower. They do not provide that they even get past the revert to zero. Because, and they bring up Dr. Maruki. This is very important because Dr. Maruki is the key to whether or not you think Requiem would affect Giorno. And from their own definition, they say that Dr. Maruki could affect Ren and the rest of the Phantom Thieves, which is true. Because at any point, he could have messed with Ren's memories. He chooses not to because he wants Ren to have a choice. So by even their own logic, Requiem should just out-hacks Ren. Just flat out.
Yeah, because again, even if you believe Almighty Attack's best dip, he wouldn't be able to fire off the Almighty Attack unless it's the first attack he does. But if he does fire Almighty at the start, before Requiem even takes effect, then Giorno just dies. So this would be, if they're bloodlusted and they know what their ability, well, no, it would only matter if Ren knows. If Giorno knows,
well, no. That's also if you give the concession that you think that bending the laws of physics or the laws of the universe equals fate.
Yes, but so okay, that's a good point. Then let's segue to their fate portion of this reasoning. So they stay in the black box. That fate is not unbeatable in JoJo. It has been altered by abilities like Soft and Wet Go Beyond and Made in Heaven.
Do you want to go through Soft and Wet Go Beyond? Because you have a lot to say about Part 8.
So I Soft and Wet Go Beyond altering fate. Now, to be clear, I don't believe either of these abilities alters fate personally. But what Soft and Wet Go Beyond is just a non-existent spin going after Wonder of You or the Doctor, if you prefer. It's just non-existence. It's not that it's beating fate. There's no fate to operate on it because it's not a real object. It's not, and technically it's not non-existent either because it's like, I think the smallest possible particle. I think they do mention it's something in reality, but it's so small fate can't operate on it.
Don't they fight the bubble to something like smaller than a hair, but it's still like something kind of physical, but it's like unbelievably small?
Yeah, so they tell you at the start, I think that it's unbelievably small, and some JoJo fans will watch this and correct me if I'm wrong. They start off by saying it's non-existent or it's not real, but then later they clarify it is real, but it's so small that Calamity just doesn't seem to work on it. And again, I would not argue Calamity is manipulation either.
That's what it is. It's so infinitesimally small that it just wouldn't work on it.
Yeah, so that's just fate having a limit that makes no fucking sense. But I would also argue that
it's also like before you continue, like if you read Gold Experience Requiem's stand profile, its power isn't fate; it's willpower manipulation and action manipulation.
I mean, I would argue no JoJo villain actually has fate as a power again because they mentioned that Made in Heaven also manipulates fate. That's not true. Made in Heaven just speeds up the universe to its heat death and has everyone repeat their life over and over again, but it's not manipulating fate. Neither does Soft and Wet Go Beyond because again, Calamity isn't fate. They're different abilities. Although I do believe Araki did claim Calamity is either equal to or might be similar to Fate, which I'm assuming is where this interpretation comes from. But the Fate is not set in stone. These are not Fate abilities that were bested, is what I'm getting at.
Also, trying to equate Almighty to what Heaven Ascension Dio does when he fights Gold Experience Requiem is such a false equivalency because what what Heaven Ascension Dio does is that anything he touches, he can erase. That's not the same thing.
So to be fair, it's not just that he can erase anything he touches. I believe he can also rewrite reality with what he touches. But
Yes.
that is a specific ability that would just override the power of Gold Experience Requiem because he's overriding everything. Almighty attacks don't do that. The argument is Almighty attacks can bypass a similar ability that could stop GER, presumably, but that's not what Almighty attacks do themselves. So you wouldn't assume Almighty attacks could bypass the same way. Don't get me wrong, I understand why they came to the conclusion they did about Almighty attacks based on the scan they provided.
That's also how do I put this? While it could be an almighty attack from the omnipotent orb, what are the chances that's just a property of the orb, not almighty?
That is a possibility as well, that the orb just cannot affect Almighty, and that Almighty doesn't have a special resistance to, or a special like property that makes it unblockable. Now, Almighty attacks are consistently unblockable in that universe of Shin Megami Tensei. I'm not saying they're not, but in this particular case, you could make the argument, and I do believe it might be a little bit in bad faith in case anyone criticizes his position. I do understand where that would come from, but the point is, no, go on.
No, finish your point because I remember that for Jorno Speed, not Jorno Speed, for Ren Speed, they use Lucifer's Morningstar ability as a speed feat for what they should be able to dodge, which I'd like to get into.
Okay, so my final point is the orb bends the laws of the universe. Dio, and I believe we talked about this in the reaction video, Dio either rewrites or erases them. So Dio's reality warping would be more potent than the ironic here, the omnipotent orb.
Now, getting into Morningstar, no enemy you fight in the game uses Morningstar. This comes from a special attack that you have when you use a Lucifer. And there are light speed attacks in the game that, depending on how shitty you want to be, you either can't dodge, or the likelihood that you will dodge is so unbelievably small that it's basically non-existent. You have one from the Holy Grail, which I have played Persona 5 like fucking 20 times. I have never had any of the characters dodge it. And you have the Big Bang Burger Burst during the Akumura fight, and I've never had any of the characters dodge it. And this gets into like whether or not you think it's fine to use RNG as like canonical dodging speed for turn-based characters.
Yes. But now that's going to be a case-by-case basis for how you want to take dodging in turn-based games. I would just say that if the percentages are very low, it should be factored in that it would be very difficult for them to dodge it at all. So scaling them to it might be a little more generous. But
the one I would coincide that is you see what attacks the enemies can use against you. You don't see what every attack can do, because you don't face opponents that have every attack in the game. Like, there are just certain attacks that are very hyper-specific to one persona.
yes,
Because some personas, like the top of the Archons, have their own like special attacks. Like Alice has her own special attack. Lucifer has his own special attack. I'm pretty sure Metatron and Beelzebub have their own special attacks.
I have not played Persona 5. I'll take your word for it, but I did know in SMT3 they did have unique attacks. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Is there
Well,
anything else?
overall, because I know we have a lot of SMT and Persona fans in like our server and shit. I hate to tell you people this, but this fight comes down to realistically, it's not stats. It's can Gold Experience Requiem affect Ren? If the answer is yes, then Ren loses. If the answer is no, then Giorno loses. But we get this answer from Dr. Maruki. And Dr. Maruki can affect Ren at any point he chooses. And he can override his memory. He can override everything about him. So, yeah, there's absolutely zero reason why Gold Experience Requiem would lose. And even if you try and say, well, he'll fire the Sinful Shell doesn't have any statements other than being empowered by the collective unconscious. And outside of that, he can just turn that action to zero. Because again, they've shown that that at best he's immune to willpower manipulation. They've never shown that he can stop the return to zero.
It's also a very valid question of how do you want to take social contracts and getting buffed from friends and the collective unconsciousness in a one-on-one death battle. So, because I believe, because
that will come up later.
Kyle, we're at 20 minutes. This is gonna be the longest part of the video. The way this is going.
No, but like this one was a matchup that I remember shit me super bad. But you also weren't very confident when we were watching this one either.
Because the issue is when you're power scaling, you have to make judgment calls. And I do give Death Battle a hard time for the judgment calls, of which I do believe they deserve quite a bit of flack for some of them. But I also understand that sometimes their judgment calls favor one person. In the case of this Death Battle, the fact that they were kind of including the collective unconsciousness on Giorno's side, along with humanity's buff and social links as buffing him directly, but they don't say he earned it and he keeps a permanent buff. No, they kind of imply humanity would have helped him or his friends would have called out and helped him. I think even in the animation, that's what happens.
Yeah. So this is not just a problem with this. This is kind of a problem with 90% of the fights in this season alone, is that you can tell that they had a horse that they were betting on, and they don't hide it.
Is the best way I would say on that one.
Because there is always a character in one of these episodes this season that has gotten way more leeway than the rest of them.
Yes. And to be clear, if you're doing versus matchups or talking about it, you obviously have to pick someone you think is going to win and explain why they would win. That is not the issue. The issue is that in the case of Death Battle, they're a lot more obvious in who's getting the blatant favoritism. What?
And the problem is that they don't bring in selective research teams for different series, so each series has their best going in to bat for the character.
Yeah.
They have one research team that covers a broad standing amount of different verses, and you can tell which verses the research teams love and which ones that they are either impartial or dislike for how hard that they'll bat for certain arguments.
Yes, as far as we know, that's how Death Battle works, because we don't watch Death Battle cast, and I don't think Death Battle's ever actually talked about how their behind the scenes ever worked. At least not consistently.
Well, I know one of the people who frequent the Death Battle cast all the time is a massive SMT head. He goes by Swan. I know he fucking sucks off SMT a lot.
I have not watched a single Death Battle cast. I'm sure they're decent watches. I just haven't watched them.
No, because I remember hearing his opinions before he got called up to being part of the Death Battle cast. Do you remember when some of the researchers kind of had their own little channel, things like MKDLF or something?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but that's over 10 years ago. That's an old one. Yeah, I feel old.
Feel old.
But so okay, you want to finish your point so we can move on to the next one?
I've pretty much finished. Giorno should have won, and this is one of the fights in the season that was kind of robbed, and they basically went for the easy answer.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Now,
Yes, we are recording now. Yes, I just started it.
right?
So, Bowser versus Eggman. Let's start with the positives of this death battle because I think,
Well,
regardless of personal opinion, this was the best death battle of the season. Would you disagree?
this was so beautifully animated. This was top tier to watch. Like, this is just a fun watch. But this is going to be the opposite of Jorno versus Joker, where I had a lot to say about this one. It's going to be now Zim who has a lot to say about this one, while I will be like putting little quips here and there what I thought.
So I want to start by making it clear my position. I believe this death battle is wrong. I do believe this death battle in my heart of hearts is wrong. But I also don't know the research of Mario, and my Sonic research is lacking to definitively provide, because in the last section we could explain all our positions. I cannot do that. And I'm being upfront about that. But I do want to say I do believe this matchup is wrong.
So this is kind of like the fun duality of us is like, even when we watched this when this came out, we are both of the opinion that this fight is wrong. It feels that they got this wrong, but we can't put our finger on why.
We haven't done the research into either character enough to confirm what is wrong. I
But it
think,
feels wrong.
yes, I think a part of it is because even when Death Battle gets the matchups right, they make a lot of mistakes in how they present or the information they provide that can lead to a different conclusion. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just like the Death Battle sense where it's like, where are you
I,
guys bullshitting? Where are you lying?
I think it's one of those things where it's like, they said that they would basically give them everything, but it's like, but you really didn't for Eggman, because by all rights,
Yes.
they talk about everyone that betrays him without mentioning, if you're basically going to do composite Eggman, you'd basically be giving everyone who ever betrayed him, including like Knuckles, Shadow, Infinity, like
Yes.
all of them.
And this is the first thing I want to start with is for how the Death Battle operated. They pointed out how Death Battles or Eggman's alliances break apart as time goes on. They didn't break apart in one fight. Every single alliance they reference breaks after a certain period of cooperation.
Because everyone that he teams with, this is where it's one of those things where it's like, they're not under his control. They have a mutual goal, or they're using each other to achieve a goal.
Yes. And that's where like the first issue came up for me when I watched this death battle. Because the fact that Shadow and Knuckles and a lot of other mech units and people were not included, and the argument was they betrayed Eggman, was
Oh, hang on.
definitely a wild position. Because you're basically
Am I
neutering half of Eggman's like entire army across like the series.
well? Correct me if I'm wrong, but uh, am I thinking? Am I thinking of his grandfather, or did Eggman have like some sort of arrangement with Black Doom?
I feel like Eggman did have an arrangement at one point. I'd have to go back and check again. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say it's 100% wrong that this death battle was wrong because I did talk to Neo, and while I'm not 100% on everything Neo says, I do trust Neo enough to be honest and know his research. And Neo told me that this matchup was close enough to go either way. Although I
I
believe
think what
Neo himself said that the reasoning in Death Battle was kind of iffy, although I could be wrong about what Neo was saying.
Yeah, I think he did say that it kind of depends on what you are willing to give either character.
Yes. But so that was definitely the first issue was that they didn't give him his whole army. But then the other issue came up when you see what they actually give Bowser, because at one point they'd say that Bowser gets access to the Dreamstone, which allows him to wipe things from reality. not only does Bowser never demonstrate that power, but from what I understand and from what people like released information about this death battle afterwards, because we're not the only channel that talks about death battle. A lot of other scalers will provide evidence for why death battle was wrong or where death battle made mistakes. Bowser, I guess,
We
never gets
also
the
have.
Dreamstone.
I was
So
gonna
they
say,
gave
like,
him an
I
item
think
he
this
never
came.
actually gets.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say, I think this came from during the chat in the when we were actually watching this the first time. I think somebody in our Discord server pointed out he never. It's either he never gets it or he never does that feat directly, or it's somebody else's feat.
Yes. Well, he never does the feat, and then later on, I was told he also never even gets the Dreamstone on its own, which is what they give him. He does get the Super Flower, but that's a one-time power-up he gets, which again, I don't mind one-time power-ups being used in Death Battle, but Eggman doesn't get his one-time alliances that worked fine up until a certain point. But Bowser gets every one-time power-up he's ever even fucking glanced at.
Well, it's also the like again, this is gonna come across as like I'm aware this is gonna come across as ignorant, but surely at this point in the timeline, um, like Sonic in his base should be able to fight people like Solaris without super form. Like again, maybe people are going to be like, "No, you're fucking nuts." Again, I'm just going. I'm just shooting the shit here. We both acknowledge that we have very little knowledge on either series,
Yes, this is very much
but
one.
you'd think if characters could fight Supersonic even after that point, anyone who could fight Supersonic would scale to that level.
There was also a bit of a false equivalency that happened in the death battle, and this was based on their research. So their position was that power stars and grand stars could rewrite reality when they all come together, and because there's more power stars and grand stars, they would beat the Chaos Emeralds. But if the ceiling of the feat is the same and they're both uni plus with the demonstration of their power, you would kind of have to prove that that works that way, but they don't really talk about it. They just say, "Oh, well, power stars could help do this, and there's more of them." So wouldn't they just have less power than each Chaos Emerald if they both equaled the same feat?
You'd think so. But that leads into another thing that they said that really kind of annoyed the both of us when we first watched it, and that's Kamek would steal the Chaos Emeralds, which we both said, how would he even know to steal them?
Yes. There's also the fact of the matter that a lot of the feats that I believe are present if for Bowser is scaling off of other people using those powers, not Bowser himself, as like a scope. But they also did give a massive advantage to Bowser's army under the position that Bowser's army would know what to go after when they would, to be clear, Bowser's army is not that smart. And even more than that, Eggman's army is vastly superior in intelligence. So while yes, I
If,
understand their position that
if
Sage
you
could.
like, if you like, what Kamek and Bowser, who are intelligent, and everybody else is basically a dumb grunt.
Well, like I mean, I'm not gonna call them dumb, but they're not strategists on the battlefield. They're not making these fucking split-second decisions.
Yeah,
They're fighting a
they're not like
guy who
they're not like
jumps and
Metal
shoots
Sonic.
fire.
I was gonna say like they're not like Metal Sonic who adapts to strategies on the fly to every individual person that he's fighting.
Yes, and that's where it got really weird because they very clearly wanted to acknowledge that there was an intelligence gap, but then they also gave massive intelligence or knowledge, I guess, advantages to Eggman's army. They don't say that, but that's how they present it. And then there was also the issue of they give Bowser his black ink form. I forgot what it was called. It's like Bowser's Rampage. They give him that Bowser form. The game directly confirms, and this is one of the few things I checked, that Bowser loses his mind when he enters that state. And he just becomes a mindless monster. He's gonna kill his son and all of his soldiers if Mario doesn't stop him. That's the whole point of them asking Mario to help. So in the death battle, when they gave Bowser that form, Bowser should have been attacking his own army as well. But for whatever reason, they don't mention that in the death battle.
Well, it's not even just that. like I'm pretty sure the bones Bowser that he gets after he like dies in lava, he doesn't just from what I remember of playing Super Mario Bros. He doesn't just come back straight away. It takes him a little bit to come back later.
There's also another issue on the table, which is the position of that people don't scale the Bowser strength because they point out like Yoshi doesn't scale the Bowser, but everyone who's fought Bowser in the Mario world, correct me if I'm wrong, fights him in physical combat.
Mario has physically overpowered Bowser before because that's literally the entire point of the final fight in 64, isn't it?
Yeah, you literally just you either beat Bowser by throwing bombs at him and then toss it. No, you smack Bowser down, you grab him by his tail, and then you fling him at bombs to do damage to him. But the point I'm getting at,
maybe Mario fans can correct me, but as far as I'm aware, Peach scales to Mario physically, Luigi scales to Mario physically, and so does Yoshi.
like,
and so does Donkey Kong.
Fight and Bowser in his base and hurt him. The position that Bowser's vastly superior to his enemies physically is a little debatable, given they all beat the shit out of him in hand-to-hand combat for the most part. And I know, obviously, being a little fallacious, they have power-ups, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, maybe it's true he is physically superior to them in different forms, but not his base. Maybe
the other issue is when they give the metal virus, they mentioned that Bowser could counter it with transmutation. You would be under the impression that Bowser would have the chance to do so, or that he would even be smart enough to realize to do that.
No, you're putting the cart before the horse. That's even assuming he would even know to even try to use transmutation to get rid of it.
This is the problem when you try and give a lot of benefits of the doubt to a character, because Bowser, while he's not dumb, he's also not that smart either. I would say
been outsmarted.
Not only has he been outsmarted, but he doesn't use transmutation often or like ever. He doesn't use half of his abilities like ever. And I understand in the purpose of the versus matchup, you examine a character in their entirety. But I believe there was I believe someone pointed it out. And I could be wrong about this one, so correct me if I'm wrong. Bowser has never done that. Bowser has turned people into objects, but he's never turned them back. From what I understand, he's never demonstrated.
Well, he's never. Well, he's never stripped somebody of like a cybernetic virus either.
There's also the issue where they equate technology to certain magical situations, and that's fine. I don't disagree with that. But the idea of nullifying powers seems a little far-fetched, especially for Kamek, because they point out that Kamek can nullify powers in the RPG. I don't recall him doing that in any of the Mario games that are not RPGs. Now, granted, again, I understand it's a composite death battle. You're compositing the character across all their material. So I understand that this is coming off as a little bit of like a salty, potential fanboy situation. Well aware of that.
But this is the overall problem of like the gist that I got from like talking to Neo is it's not really composite for Eggman because Eggman has one timeline that we follow. It's just Eggman from the beginning of the Genesis games to now. Bowser has multiple different timelines that they're pulling from.
They also didn't give Eggman several creatures he would have had access to or he's had access to in the past. I know a lot of people pointed out that Eggman should have gotten Solaris, but they didn't give it to him because of reasons. I don't remember the exact reasons.
Well, again, it's like what I said at the start of this section is like he should have had Shadow, he should have had Knuckles, he should have had a ton of different people. Like anyone that they mentioned that has betrayed him, he should have technically have had them in this fight.
Yes. And also, again, a lot of concessions are given for how Eggman would counter, or how Bowser would counter Eggman, except that, well, most of Eggman's troops shouldn't even scale to the speed that like Metal Sonic can even fight at. And
well, the problem as well is that like I remember that Sonic has a turn-based RPG, and I'm pretty sure it has some like power null stuff in that too that they never talk about.
I'd have to check if Sonic does have a turn-based RPG. I'm not too familiar about that one. I'd
I,
have to go back and check that one.
I do remember specifically it had one because I had it on the DS.
And I wonder if they just didn't touch that because they didn't talk about the advanced games. Actually, I think Mecha Knuckles. No, Mecha Knuckles is from somewhere else. Overall, it was a good death battle. Even if I disagree with the matchup, it is the one death battle I will say is the epitome of peak death battle. This is probably going to be their best death battle.
Despite all the gripes of research, this is fucking peak. If you have not watched as just a pure entertainment fight, do yourself a favor. It is really good.
Yes, this one was fantastic. But let us move on. All right, so death battle number 4, Among Us versus Fall Guys for the season, which also seems to be the start of the trend of 3 categories. Well, we'll touch on that when that becomes relevant later on. Oh, believe me, we will. But um personally, this one was fine. I'm fairly confident this was meant to be a joke matchup. I'm fairly confident. I'm not 100%. I'm fairly confident.
The problem, look, my opinion on this matchup is from the research that they have in this, from the research and the evidence that they give you, they got it right. The problem is when you actually start digging into stuff and it's like, this shouldn't have been the result, especially when their best durability feat comes from Fortnite, which is very weird and sets a very weird trend, whether or not they're going to use crossover games like that.
Yes, and I will say that is probably my biggest issue with Death Battle is they will use composite information in one Death Battle and then they won't in a later Death Battle, and they don't ever give like a proper reason for why some people get composites or not. To be fair, they might have mentioned it for this one. I could be wrong about that because we haven't seen this Death Battle in a long time and we're sort of just rehashing their conclusion. But the one issue I had with this one was the Twitter statement of the guy stretching beyond the observable universe because he can't do that normally. It's I believe the exact tweet says you can make him grow by liking the tweet. That's not a normal thing they can do.
The bottom line is that, like, at best, that's a enhanced version. But the other problem with them using Twitter statements is that there's going to be a fight coming up where that should absolutely bite them in the ass very badly.
So ultimately, this was a fun death battle. No real skin off anyone's nose. I don't think anyone really cared about this one. Again, I very much feel this was supposed to be like a lighthearted joke death battle after 2 controversial death battles and peak. But not really much to say on this one because this one ultimately was just no one cared enough to research these characters to actually like cross-check it. And I'm sure this could have gone either way, but if you're going to include Fortnite scaling for the Fall Guys, I mean at that point it's just yeah, probably Fortnite. Fortnite can get some pretty absurd scaling positions.
Yeah, but again, that's going to be a problem to see if they do next season. Is if they use a character that's been in Fortnite, they're going to give them Fortnite scaling, or if this is just like they had nothing to work with, so they were grasping at straws.
Yes. So let us go to the next one. Hang on. Okay. So the next death battle on the list is
Usa.
Ozra versus Kratos.
Usa.
We had a lot of choice words on this one when it first came out, but
We
I
have some
had
choice words now.
forgotten
We
how
forgot
I
how
felt
dog shit.
about this
We
matchup.
forgot how dog shit their reasons were.
Yeah, I actually forgot this death battle in almost its entirety. And after just watching their conclusion, all the emotions just flooded back.
Uh, let me put it to you this way. This section's going to be long, but fuck me, if we had Mangler, this would need to be broken up into multiple different videos.
Oh man, this was fucking terrible. So let's first get through Kyle's pet peeve. Or well, not Kyle's pet peeve. The bullshit this death battle was given. Twitter statements were not used for Kratos. They don't tell you why Twitter statements weren't used. I believe they give a. Hang on, I'm gonna get their exact statement. I don't wanna.
Except, Twitter statements weren't used. They said that they weren't going to use them, except for the fact that they use certain information that you would only ever know if you use Twitter, like Ariel Lawrence's statement about the primordials creating the universe.
Yes, but so all official material related to a character is applied to an analysis unless found contradictory to primary source material. Certain alternative media, e.g., B is for boy, and creator statements are only applicable as far as they are supported by the primary source. So, Death
Do you
Battle's
want me to tell you?
position.
Do you want me to cut through what that means politically? Politically, that means if we don't agree with what the directors or the writers have said now, we're just not going to use it because
Yes,
it goes against our position.
because the first major issue, well, actually, okay, let's take it one step at a time because they got four categories for this one. They got four, but yeah, no, they basically anyone who actually looked into this would know that the Twitter statements completely shit on Kratos' scaling because it completely kills the idea of the cosmology being as big as people want it to be. But to be honest,
Oh,
so
I'm
do the
sorry.
fucking games.
I was
So
going to say so do the fucking games, and the problem is that as this, correct me if I'm wrong, when this came out, the Valhalla DLC came out, didn't it?
Uh, yes, I believe Valhalla was out by this point. I believe Valhalla was. If it wasn't, please correct us. But I believe Valhalla was out at this point. And Valhalla, for sure, solves the cosmology problem of God of War. Something fierce.
Yeah, well, if the Sacred Treasures didn't do it already, or the
No,
rest of the series actually had competent reading comprehension.
yeah. The problem when you have people scaling Kratos is you have a lot of loud, angry people scaling Kratos, but the second you sit them down and go through the evidence, they just start fumbling. And I'm not disrespecting God of War scalers in their entirety. I'm just saying that the cosmology is not supported by the game nor by the authors. Everyone holds on to like this one statement from I think Corey in a Gamescom convention. I don't remember
But
which one it
they,
was. I think it was like
they,
17.
they take it out of context. They say that it has something to do with the overall world, but what they don't understand is that he's forming his hands into a globe, and he says that we haven't explored the actual greater universe. Like, go to our God of War cosmology videos. Mangler goes over this ad fucking nauseum, or if you want him to go through it again, fucking add him at fucking a stream.
Or I'm pretty sure you can just watch the stream. I think he was there, or he did a video for this one at a later point. I'm sure we have something on our channel
So
about it.
we reacted to this, and he went through all these points ad nauseum. So you can just go and find our original reaction to this death battle.
So, just some quick points here as they bring them up. Kratos directly defeated Atlas in combat. No, he
No,
didn't. No God of War fan would even argue this. If you watch Kratos fight Atlas, not only is he going to be killed by Atlas in God of War 2, but he only beats Chains of Olympus. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it is Chains of Olympus for Atlas. Go on.
I'm confirming it for you.
Okay.
It is Chains of Olympus because it's
He
during the fight with Persephone where all he does is he basically chains him to holding up the rest of Greece. Because if Greece fell, it would have killed him, Atlas, Persephone, and the entirety of the Greek pantheon.
Yes, that is correct. Hang on. Got to pick something up. I know, I'm professional. I know. Right. No. Yeah, not only does Kratos not beat Atlas in a fair fight whatsoever, he also doesn't even beat him in direct combat either because he just finesses him and just dodges his attacks and chains him to the roof. At no
And
point does
I
Atlas
remember.
ever.
I remember this specifically because when Mangler was talking about Two's novel,
Yes.
Two's novel goes over the point where Kratos is in between Atlas's two fingers, and it says that Kratos' muscles are screaming for help. He wants this to stop. He's in so much pain.
Yes, Kratos does not scale to Atlas the way Death Battle argues here, which anyone who played the games would already fucking know that, but whatever. So regarding scaling to Helios, okay.
He, so there's only one thing that they could be talking about is when Helios is literally trying to shine his light during God of War 3 at Kratos. But the problem with this is that even if you slow down the footage, he doesn't react to the light. He gets hit with the light and then he puts his hand up. This is the equivalent of coming out of a tunnel when you're driving and you get hit with that sunlight and you put the sun visor down or you put your hand up. You're doing the same thing.
Yes, and this is a very disingenuous position by Death Battle because you just have to watch the cutscene to see that Kratos does not blitz the light. The light hits it. This is an endurance feat or a durability feat more than it is a speed feat because Kratos gets hit by it. But they reference that if Ozro were to destroy the planet Kratos was on, he could survive in outer space. Keep in mind, I believe there are Twitter statements disagreeing with that position, but
yes,
they specifically mention God of War 2 in its novelization. But notice how they don't mention how Atlas's strength is enough to kill Kratos, very easily. They'll
Or notice how they don't show you a scan from 2's novel. Because God of War's novels go out of their way to basically show, yes, Kratos is stronger than the average person, but that's all he is just a barely stronger than the average person. He is susceptible to everything else. He gets thirsty, he gets tired, he gets hungry, he gets poisoned.
This is an example of where they'll only provide evidence from source material that they agree with. Because again, the novel makes it very clear Kratos does not scale to Atlas.
Yeah, and the problem that they do here, and they do the same problem that every God of War scaler always does when they try and scale Kratos' AP. They try and say that the Greek pantheon and the Norse pantheon are separate universes, but they never prove that they're ever separated. And if you go through the series, the novels go out of their way, and even the writers and directors go out of their way to tell you that this all takes place on one planet. Now, we have a Twitter statement. I asked Bruno Valkyrius himself, is the Earth that God of War takes place on bigger? No, it's just our Earth. Which means all this shit is connected. And then when you take in Valhalla's DLC, you literally have Mimir, who already came from a different pantheon, so I don't want to hear anything about the Bloody Stone being able to go to different pantheons.
Yes.
Mimir came from a different fucking pantheon.
Mimir went to two different pantheons without the stone.
And he literally travels to Greece for a wedding.
Yes, because it's heavily implied Mimir was a part of Midsummer's Night, the Shakespeare story. But okay, so that is correct. So they're not separated by dimensional barriers or anything. They're all in the same universe. No one knows how the universe was created. But this I wanted to touch on. They argue that Kratos should scale to the primordials, but that's not substantiated by anything. I think the best argument you could make is that Kratos fights Death, and I believe Death is a primordial god.
No, so what they do, and before we touch upon that, let's touch upon something fun before we get into this little section. Isn't it funny how they never say how he canonically loses the Shovel Knight?
That is correct. Shovel Knight does canonically beat Kratos in the God of War lore because I believe Bruno also confirmed it was canon. But again,
Yes.
Twitter statement that they don't agree with, so it's automatically not valid. Which
Now,
again, if your position is that Twitter statements and author statements are not valid, that's fine. The problem with Death Battle is they flip flop on it, and that's the issue. They do it for one side, and then they don't do it for the other, and they'll never actually sit down and explain why, or actually debate anyone on it why.
but the problem is as well with this fight is you don't need Twitter statements. The game goes out of its way. You have a person from Egypt in Ascension that's come from the land of the pharaohs. You have the boat captain's key in the Norse pantheon that you can find. You can find treasures from all over the globe in the sacred treasures. Like, the series goes out of its way to try and tell you as subtly as possible that you just have to sail to get to another pantheon.
I wouldn't even call it subtle, but yeah.
But God of War fans they are so power scaling obsessed and want Kratos to be this unstoppable, like, demolition of death that they just won't accept it. Even when you point this out to them, they will try everything possible.
Yes.
And when it comes to scaling to Primordials, to answer Zim's question, what this would come from is the Primordials fight each other, which again, Mangler's gone over this in extensive detail. The Primordials didn't create the universe in a snap of the finger. This took them eons to fight each other to form it by the law of Ascension, which again, if you go by Twitter statements, the start of Ascension is not supposed to be a law-accurate representation. It's just supposed to be a fun interpretation of the fight. But getting away from that, how this would go is the Primordials were given birth to the Titans. The Titans, like Kronos, would beat Uranus, like in the lore. Zeus beats Kronos, which again we find out only happens thanks to the Sisters of Fate, so we wouldn't even scale to Kronos.
And so this
and then Kratos beats Zeus, and then that's how the scaling chain would go.
Yes, but so that assumes progressive scaling, but the problem is that the way Kronos beats Uranus in God of War's mythology and in Greek mythology is he waits for Uranus to start fucking Gaia, and then he neuters him and beats the shit out of him afterwards. So he has to weaken him in order to fight him. But the Titans are also stronger than the gods, as supported by God of War 2's novel, because according to Atlas, any rock he would have thrown that would have hit Hades would have severely injured Hades with one hit.
And you find out from the Sisters of Fate, they changed the course of that fight because the Titans were supposed to win the Titanomachy.
Yes. And that's also supported by Greek mythology, because in Greek mythology, the Titans were also stronger than the gods. The gods needed weapons and alliances in order to beat the Titans.
If I remember correctly, this is more if Mangler was here, but I'm pretty sure they got help from the Hecatoncheires. That's why they won, wasn't it?
Yes. The Hecatoncheires helped out quite a bit in that war. But, so, the scaling chain doesn't work and is only substantiated by a potential Twitter statement, but they don't accept Twitter. So you wouldn't assume they scale 1-to-1. And keep in mind,
that's not even,
no one was around
that's not even getting into problems about the Yggdrasil itself.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. Also, regarding speed, Ozra's 2.58 quadrillion, Kratos is 2.45 quadrillion, according to Death Battle.
This is
still substantially faster.
But this is what Zim was mentioning when he says that, like, I have a gripe with this. So they say that 2.5 quadrillion and 2.58 quadrillion are not so different apart that it matters in terms of speed. That is not fucking true. These are demonstrably greater speeds.
Because, so to clarify what this is telling you, they're saying 2 quadrillion, 450 trillion, ... versus 2 quadrillion, 580 trillion.
This is times the speed of light. This is where I get really upset when they try these arguments of like, oh, well, this character's only 2 times faster. It's like, well, it wouldn't matter. Let's say you had one character who's the speed of light and the other character who's 2 times the speed of light. If you were to try and break this down the way they do, they would say that the difference isn't even a 2 times difference, so therefore he should still be able to keep up with his character. No, this is still a light speed amount of difference. The problem with this one is that Ashura is still millions, billions of times faster than Kratos.
Yes, and this is more a problem when you get to big numbers and you try and argue the differences are comparable. Because like if I move 5 miles an hour and someone's 10 times faster than me, they're only 50 miles an hour. You would assume that
That's not
like
terrible.
you would assume that gap I could deal with. But when your numbers start reaching light speed, the flat number is so massive that even doubling it should let you speed blitz your opponent, despite the fact that that doesn't make sense on a standard level. Now,
The
granted,
problem,
oh, go
I
on.
was going to say, the problem with this is they could have every number the same, but if Ashura is still at the very end of the digits, got 1 times light speed over Kratos, Kratos would never be able to see him or touch him. This is not up for debate, and this is even if this is being generous because Ashura has infinite speed scaling thanks to Nirvana.
Yeah, yes, but okay. Even if you believe the speed like that works, and that we're wrong about how we interpret light speed differences, Kratos wasn't skilled in the primordial shockwaves. None of the gods would, nor the Titans, because the shockwaves are not attached to the primordial's fire. The shockwaves are the result of slamming into each other and trying to kill each other. This would be like saying if you clap your hands, you would scale to the speed of sound. Doesn't quite work that way. Chakravartin's laser, Ozra directly dodges. The feats are not 1-to-1, but let's go a little faster here because we've talked about speed. All right, so versatility they gave to Kratos. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. Ozra's abilities are not
The
that.
only thing I'll say is that like while he does have versatility in weapons, the problem is that Ashura can bombard the battlefield with projectile fists and blow up the fucking like planet.
Yes. Now, again, even if you believe Kratos could theoretically survive in space, he can't move in space, which they kind of gloss over as well. What's he going to do to Ozra, who can just fly around and hit him in his blind spots? Also, they basically give Kratos all of his items and abilities when Kratos, at best, can only hold like 4, but it's okay. Gameplay only matters for certain death battles against others. It's
Oh,
okay.
it only matters if you're a demon hunter.
Ah. Uh, Chakravartin's time manipulation affecting Kratos is fine, or affecting him being affected by time manipulation is fine. In God of War Ascension, Hades and his warriors empowered themselves with souls represented as green orbs. Blade of Olympus drained Kratos of his green orbs in God of War 2, supporting the notion he can absorb mantra. So this gets kind of complicated because the blade can only absorb divinity, I think, according to the novel.
Yes, but the problem as well is they're correlating that green orbs and mantra are the same thing. I remember all 3 of us had a big issue with this. Mantra in Ashura's Wrath is souls. It's not the same thing. It's not vitality.
Well, so to clarify, their position is that green orbs are souls in God of War, but that's not always correct. But let's assume they're correct about that. Mantra isn't technically souls either. It's a more refined energy using souls. There is a distinction there that gets ignored. Mangler went in more detail about this, so there is a distinction there. Hang on. All right. Gotta go a bit further. Also, this fight was dog shit. We didn't talk about it, but this fight was probably the worst one of the season.
The worst part is that people fucking paid for this fight, and there were parts of the animation that were not supposed to be in there, like the Kratos headshot that became a meme that was not supposed to be in there, and also the fact of like Ashura just has his controller disconnect.
Yeah, I think we saw that one on Twitter that there were some things that were added that weren't supposed to be in there. Despite Azura's soul being resistant to manipulation, Mantra energy has been harnessed and forcibly controlled before, such as by the Mantra reactor. You'll notice how they'll never say that Azura's
Kratos
Mantra
had his
was
soul
controlled.
fucked with as well.
Not only is Kratos has soul fucked with as well, but the mantra they're talking about is people willingly giving up their life to power things like the mantra reactor that the seven deities used. Azura's mantra, as far as I remember, has never been forcibly used. So okay, a bit of a false equivalency.
And from what I think from what we were told in the Ashura's Wrath manga, he can just straight up wasn't he can regenerate from his soul, or he can regenerate like super quickly to the point where it doesn't matter what Kratos does, he would never be able to kill him because he can't negate that.
Yes, but so their position was that Kratos could absorb things from being stronger than Azura, which keep in mind, we'll talk about that later, but that would be wrong because they haven't even explained that position yet. And also, they argue that keeping his body parts separate would keep Azura down. The manga's a little unclear on this one, but let's touch on like the main issue of power. So Chakravartin gets scaled to his golden form in its entirety, giving a very generous estimate, which yeah, it's very generous. I'm not sure I would agree with it personally, but fine, 91,000 times light speed or the destruction of the universe.
Wouldn't really matter because so this is kind of an issue because they don't talk about how astronomically quickly Ashura literally adapts and gets stronger.
Yes, because they also don't talk about a potential multiplier or a potential strength gap for Chakravartin, the creator. Because Chakravartin goes from being strong enough, from being almost equal to Asura, to being so strong that Asura's most powerful punch at that point was blocked
He
with one
stops.
finger casually. And they don't even
Yeah,
try to
he gets
estimate
flicked
like
away.
how big that'd be.
He gets flicked away, and that's also not even going over the fact of like I think in the guidebook it's stated that Chakravartin, the creator, that white void is infinite in size, and it's also the fact of like Chakravartin suggests that he has made other universes before, which should probably be infinite in size. He's probably he made Nirvana. You can tell that as the Golden Spider, and like
Yes.
at a bare minimum, he should be sitting at like low multi, which would sit higher than any observable calculation you can give Universal.
So this is where we're going to get into some fun territory about how you want to scale Ragnarok from God of War Ragnarok. So they argue that because Freyr is able to hold back Ragnarok's power for a significant time, to be as clear as possible, again, this is a disingenuous position. I'm explaining how they're presenting it. So to clarify, Freyr is holding back the sparks of the
From the
sword.
sword.
The thing that shakes the Yggdrasil is the explosion that kills all of them and kills Freyr instantly. So the
So,
actual feat that they're arguing is hang on, I think they argue it's
so, and you're trying to find that. The one thing that they don't talk about, which is before the final mission, every character you talk to, especially like Freya, makes explicitly clear this is basically a suicide mission. They need to get
yes.
in, kill Odin, and leave before Ragnarok does anything. Otherwise, they will die.
Yes. But the feat that gets to 9 million, the universe's energy, and this is based on the assumption the Yggdrasil is holding up all of creation. We know it's not because it doesn't hold up the other pantheons, and none of the other pantheons have a connection to the Yggdrasil. Also, Kratos himself openly makes that clear, and no one says otherwise. The only pantheon that's held up by the World Tree is just the Norse pantheon, but whatever, which is just Greenland.
Well,
Greenland or Iceland? Is it Greenland?
it's Scandinavia, but
My bad. I'm really bad at geography.
here's the other problem: is how the realms are actually like linked together. Because they try and say like, "Oh, look at this official map." It's like, no. This is a beautified map of how they think the tree works. In reality, they are just dimensions stacked on top of each other.
Yes.
They all have the same time flow and everything.
Yes, the just perception changes. But to clarify, the actual explosion feat that gets this number, no one scales to in any capacity because the second the explosion happens, Freyr immediately dies, and so would have Kratos. The
Oh, it's not.
embers of the sword do not scale to the explosion.
It's not even that. It's not just that. Because people are just like, oh, well, he would scale to Ragnarok. He doesn't even scale to Surtur. Surtur, when Kratos and Atreus went to go and ask him for help, casually flicked them both away.
Also, to be clear, if you are under the impression, so technically, you would assume that the Titans and the gods of the Greek pantheon would be weaker than Ragnarok. Because they also try and argue that the Titans did things similar along with the Greek gods, but that's also not true. If you believe the scaling chain as it's presented, Ragnarok is probably the strongest character in God of War. Or would you disagree with that?
No, bar none. Like, stronger than everything. Everyone shit themselves when Ragnarok showed up.
It's also
Like,
worth noting that, like,
Odin did everything possible to make it so Surtur, his girlfriend, could never reunite because he knew what Ragnarok would do.
yes. So no, the one feat they give Kratos that would let him potentially AP stomp Azura doesn't exist for Kratos, and anyone who says otherwise is being blatantly just like just.
And again, if you are a God of War fan and you disagree with this, the next time Mangler is on stream, because he knows this way better than the both of us, this is just us like giving you bullet points from what we remember of these points. He would be able to tell you in detail all of this of why, like, where Kratos scales and why this is like completely wrong.
Yes. So let us continue now to the next one. Hang on, let me end it here. All right.
This one's gonna be way quicker because I have reviews, but I don't know either or care about either of these characters.
Yes. So Spawn versus Ghost Rider is the next one on the table. Also had 4 categories. What a shocker.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm gonna say is Mangler told me that a lot of the stuff they gave Spawn isn't correct in its entirety, but a lot of people have also pointed this out. But also, Spawn doesn't really scale to God and Satan. Apparently, in that comic, they constantly kill Spawn over and over again, like casually.
Well, I was gonna say too is that via via the scaling they gave Ghost Rider in terms of AP, he should be able to one shot Spawn multiple times. This should like not be even comparable. Because they basically say that like Ghost Rider is like several infinities above Spawn.
Yes.
But it's as like what Zim said. From what I've heard from Mangler, they gave Spawn every benefit of the doubt and even stuff that he shouldn't have got.
It's also just oh, what was I gonna say? I was gonna mention actually this is a beef I have not with Death Battle people in general. If if a person from a different cosmology sends you to hell, they do not send you to your hell. They send you to their hell. Because they say that sending Spawn to hell would give him like a full access to his energy source. No, it wouldn't. He would be sent to Marvel Hell, which doesn't have that energy source. I don't understand where that logic comes from.
Well, no, it's funny enough. It's along that same stupid logic of when people say like, "Oh, you can kill Kratos; he'll just come back." It's like, not if I send him to my fucking afterlife.
Overall,
Try and get out now, you white bald bitch.
overall, the death battle animation was fine, not the greatest. Again, a lot of this a lot of this season felt rough because Eggman versus Bowser came out so early in the death battle in the season. Um,
It made everything else feel lackluster in
by
comparison.
comparison, yeah.
Let's be very clear here. Uh While Ash vs. Yugi was the season final, I think they should have flipped it and had Eggman Bowser as the season final. Just from an animation perspective.
Ash versus Yugi was definitely up there. Well, we'll talk about that when we're recapping it at the end. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Overall, Ghost Rider versus Spawn, it was a fine death battle, and like with every death battle, well, actually not every death battle, with most death battles, because sometimes death battle just gets it just flat out right. A lot of people had issues with this death battle in terms of its verdict.
From
Overall, I
from
do
what
think
I've
Ghost Rider should
heard,
have taken it personally.
yeah. So from what I've heard, I think it's wrong. I think the Ghost Rider should have won. But I haven't got any attachment or any knowledge of either one of these characters, so I don't have a horse in this match.
Yes. So let us continue to the next one. All right, next death battle: Shigaraki versus Mahito. Um,
I think they got speed wrong for Mahito from what we've come to the conclusion of by the end of the series, but that's neither here or there. Personally, I do think that they did get the result right.
Yes. So
This
I
is gonna
think
come. This is gonna come down to a big problem of like both of us have been through Jujutsu Kaisen. Neither of us like Mahito, but at the same time, neither of us have been through My Hero.
yes. So we're going off of information. Look, I'm gonna say from what I've been told, it's fine. Mahito's not even a top tier in JJK, so I'm not gonna like argue like super hard in his favor. I just wasn't too fond of certain arguments or positions for this matchup. But the matchup itself was fine. The animation was solid. I don't think you liked the animation actually for this one, did you?
Not particularly. Like, bottom line, like this fight just came down to it came down to what everyone. Let's be clear. This fight's one of those ones where it's not a stat fight. It's can can Shigaraki fuck with souls or not? Because this has nothing to do with Mahito. This has everything to do with Shigaraki.
Yes. And according to people I trust, they make it clear Shigaraki can affect souls and that vestiges are very much almost one to one with souls. And if that's the case, it should be fine. Although I feel like there were some weird situations they brought up for reasonings. Overall, Death Battle was fine. It wasn't enough of a hassle for me to sit down and really break down everything they're saying, if that makes sense. But
Yeah,
overall, it was fine. I see where they're coming from. Their argument's solid, assuming it's all true. And from what I've been told, it's fine. Regardless, Shigaraki would speed blitz, and if you can see Mahito and collapse souls like that, it shouldn't be a problem.
again, it's one of those stupid arguments that Jujutsu Kaisen scalers have, where it's like, oh, he was just put him into a domain, and it's just like, well, if somebody is so much faster than you, and that's going to be your go-to, that doesn't always work because I'm pretty sure if you're fast enough, you could get out of the way of a domain being activated. It's just that no one is fucking that fast in Jujutsu Kaisen.
No, because you would be under the assumption they would know how a domain works. But yeah,
Personally, if somebody's trying to trap me in a fucking sphere coming over my head, it's not. I'm not looking to stay.
fair enough. But yeah, overall it's fine. Potential some issues, but not enough to really warrant a substantial amount of discussion. Overall, decent death battle.
Problems that I had with this one.
All right, so Master Chief versus Doomslayer. Okay, let's talk about this. First off, the animation I thought was fine, but a lot of people did not like it.
I thought the death was a little bit too tame.
Yes, I heard a lot of people complain about that. Regarding speed at the start, from what I remember, and also no, I don't agree with the matchup because the fact of the matter is that Doomslayer's AP and his scaling has been very much what's the term? I don't want to say
It's very
butchered.
butchered, contested. You can make arguments that can very easily knock the Doomslayer to like building level, the city
Yeah.
block at most.
Yes. Definitely a weird situation with the Doomslayer, but yeah, from what Mangler has told me, Master Chief Speed was wrong. And before someone says, well, like, why is Mangler here for this? It's pretty late at night when we're recording this. And if Mangler was here, this would be like a 10-hour video, not like the 2 hours it'll probably end up being.
If he's watching this and he's offended by this, like I don't think he will be.
Well,
But I think he understands.
Mangler knows what he fucking does.
I think he understands that there are certain matchups that if he was to be here to talk about, we would be here a fucking long time.
Yes. That you know, he's good at what he does. He's good at what he does. But yeah, so regarding Master Chief, yeah, speed from what I understand was an issue. But let's talk about this. Oh, just beautiful fucking scaling.
So,
So
so because we won't be showing what's on the screen because it'll be thumbnails and shit.
yeah,
They said that the Doomslayer can run faster than the rockets he can fire in Doom 1 or Doom 2. This is not true. This is false. Because this is a glitch that you can do to reach these speeds. You cannot naturally reach these speeds even with power-ups.
yes, it is very
So
much a Wall
so they're
Street
using a
thing.
game glitch. So they're using a game glitch to boost the Doomslayer's abilities, but we can't use Guardfly for Dante. Understandable.
We've definitely been being around the bush on it. We'll definitely talk about it when we get to it. But yeah, no, that was a glitch that never should have been accepted. The fact that that got through Death Battle Scaling Team either just shows a massive bias in favor of Doomslayer or a massive lack of standards for what can be accepted and what can't be accepted in Death Battle. They did have 4 categories for this one. No, go on.
Because the problem is, if we're starting to accept glitches, then there are a bunch of different verses that should get a rerun.
Regarding physical strength, for what they argued, I think their physical strength or AP or like that AP position was fine because I don't even think Master Chief should scale to the elephant feet personally. That's a gameplay only mechanic, and that's not even like the game's not even supposed to let you do that. There's literally a text box that says, "How the hell did you do that?" Because the game never expected you to flip over the elephant. I think I told you this, and I mentioned it in the live stream. The only way you can flip the elephant, ironically, is by glitching the game. Because you have to do something with the collision of objects in order to flip the elephant. It's not possible to do it normally either. So Master Chief should not have gotten that feat to begin with.
I'll take your word for it.
Yes, you will take my word for it, because I played Halo 3 religiously.
And I've played Halo never. But I have played Doom.
You have played Doom.
So, they talk about attack potency, and they talk about the Slayer Blade having like teratons worth of energy in gigatons if you break it up into the 3 charges. That's not how that works. Especially, like, yes, it can absorb power and distribute it to power up a city, and it's a city, not the world. just because you can do that, that doesn't mean your swing suddenly gains all of that energy.
Yes.
This would be the equivalent of me holding a battery and swinging the battery and me saying I have the power of the battery.
Yes, that is a reference to the Crucible weapon later on. Yes, which a lot of people took issue with how the Crucible was scaled. It was probably the most contentious part about the video. Also, the AI section was a total fucking joke. This death battle has 4 categories, and they only gave AI so Chief could have some position. It was stupid. Even they don't admit it's stupid, but they kind of make it feel. They kind of make you feel like, yeah, it's kind of fucking stupid. We had this one in
Oh,
here.
well, it's also like experience. They give it to the Doomslayer because for some reason they seem to think that age trumps all. Age is not fucking experience. And all the Doomslayer does is fight dumb, dead shit demons. That's not
Yes.
great. Yeah, he does
Yes.
it over and over and over, but when you do it over and over and over, you're not gaining any more experience. You're just doing something that you know how to do. And when your opponents are like dumb as dog shit, it's not exactly great to try and use that over and over and over again.
Yeah, that is not a good example of how that would work. So,
No, because
Arsenal.
they basically established that like, oh, he trains with the Night Sentinels, which has no clarification of what that training involves. Besides from like what we can muster as like sword training. Okay,
Yes.
cool. He's a Marine. Okay, cool. From your own information, Master Chief has several different martial arts, so he's a better fighter.
Yes. Also, they mentioned Doomslayer can kill Titans with his bare hands, but that's not entirely accurate, if that makes sense.
This, what did they say that he can kill?
He can kill Titans with his bare hands.
Ah, so I think this fight actually came out before Dark Ages. Dark Ages completely retcons that. He needed a robot every time to fight them, or he needs giant like current machine guns.
Yes. Also, we never saw Doomslayer kill a Titan with his bare hands. We only ever saw him use the Crucible to do it, and I believe the game says you need the Crucible to kill Titans. I could be wrong about that
We
though.
we never see him use the Crucible to do it. We recover the Crucible blade from one of the corpses, but we never see him fight it. So by all means, of the context that we have, he beat the demon down with the robot, and then he got out of the robot and stabbed it.
Yes. Then all right, I'll take your word for it. So let us continue. Regarding Arsenal, they basically give it to Doomslayer. But so first off, power up should not be used for Doomslayer. I don't care if he can pick them up in the game, unless Doomslayer has a way to save them in his inventory and use whenever he wants. That would not be acceptable. That should never have been acceptable. I don't understand why they have this fetish for giving Doomslayer his power ups like that. They also didn't talk about Forerunner weapons, or they downplayed the hell out of them, from what I remember.
From what I'm told by Mangler, can't they disintegrate people that they hit?
Yes, they can atomize them. Well, also they mentioned that it could resist antimatter, or the saving throw rune could counter foreign weapons that also theoretically apply antimatter destruction. Yeah, again, they were more hesitant on giving Master Chief benefits of the doubt versus Doomslayer with his weapons and such.
This is again, you've seen a running theme as we established at the start of the video. There are just characters throughout the entirety of this season, no matter which fight it is, where they are way more willing to be way more generous to them than their opponent.
Yes.
It's one thing to be generous to both parties or conservative to both parties, but when you're only doing it for one, you can kind of like feel the bias.
Yes, and to be clear, you can do a versus matchup with not having that bias by just clearly providing the evidence and everything and explaining why one side should take it. Obviously, everyone's going to have their own personal opinions. We're not saying Death Battle can't have that or they shouldn't have that. Everyone's going to have some bias. It's just that in particular, for some of these matchups, when you know the characters, it becomes very apparent there are issues involved. Anything else you'd like to say, or are we good to call it there on that one?
Unless you have anything else to say on this matchup. Because they don't really dive into the cosmic scaling to Doomslayer, so there's no real point to try and like destroy that.
Yes. All right, then. Well, we're gonna continue with the next death battle in the playlist, and we'll see you guys there. All right, recording on. So Kyle versus Simone. Good fight. This one had a good animation.
This was a fight between two characters we didn't give a diggly dog shit about until we started seeing the research and who and for what reasons Simone won. And then we had very big opinions.
Yes, so for anyone who has not seen the death battle, the main argument boils down to Simone's willpower could keep eclipsing infinities. So eventually, Simone would win the fight by transcending past Kyle's limit.
I remember we pointed this out, that at the start of the fight, that means Kyle would just be able to one-tap him.
Yes, because he would be infinitely superior, yes. That is how that would work.
Well, I think it's also the other fact of, like, Simone only ever reached those levels they did against the anti-spiral because it was his willpower and also friendship amps.
Yes, a lot of people told us during the death battle and after that Super Topo Gurren Lagann.
Don't even bother. Just basically say like his strongest form
was a team effort where they all had to help him create it, and Death Battle was under the assumption that Simone could do it by himself.
Well, I didn't realize this until we were actually watching back the results portion, but you literally see Simone and his girlfriend going in for the final kill shot together.
Also, there was a lot of leeway given to how Spiral and Anti-Spiral worked against each other, which is fine, but the point basically boils down to Kyle is so much more powerful at the start that Simone should never have enough time to close the gap.
Well, I actually remember as well, because they were talking about the different powers that Kyle has. Was it he had either willpower manipulation, where either he could amplify himself or take it away from others?
Yes, and Death Battle argued that because Simone was able to break out of the infinite labyrinth that Anti-Spiral put him in, that would mean he could resist willpower manipulation. But those are not the same powers, so that would not be a proper one-to-one resistance. It wouldn't even be the same level of attack or type of attack.
When we questioned someone who knew more about the ins and outs of this fight, the more questions we asked, the harder it became for them to justify Simone winning.
Yes, because a lot of people wanted Simone to take this fight. Also,
I mean, because people seem to love Gurren Lagann, personally, I think it was fucking mid as shit, but, you know, you do you.
So, I actually want to talk about the scan they provided, because their argument was that, Gurren Lagann's, multiverse that he absorbed was 13 dimensional spatial dimensions, and the scan they used to argue the DC multiverse only being 11 directly states that So this is the quote. There are signs in the theoretical math that imply the universe is layered well beyond the known 11 dimensions. And then the guy corrects to 12 and a third. So, the scan they use to argue that DC only has 11 dimensional spatial layers is saying that there's more than 11. I was genuinely like flabbergasted when I read that like entire statement.
The problem is as well, they are giving Simone such a benefit of the doubt that his will amps are going to be able to eclipse multiple infinities multiple times during the course of a fight, where Simone is going to be taking hits from somebody who is multiple dimensional times stronger than he is.
Yes, because when Anti-Spiral traps him in the dimensional labyrinth, and correct me if I'm wrong because you might know better than I will, Anti-Spiral doesn't fight him. Anti-Spiral traps him in a reality, hoping he'll just stay there and effectively just be nulled.
As far as I remember, yes.
It's not until I think Simone's brother reminds him of the fight and the world at large that Simone's able to break out of the labyrinth.
Yeah, so he basically needs the help of somebody else to break out of the fucking labyrinth as well.
Also, this is where another issue comes in, and this is one of the few times that battle has let a no limits fallacy occur, because Lord knows they didn't do it for DMC, but Simone's feat would only cap him at 11 dimensional. You would have to prove it can go beyond 11, because I just saw the statement they provided. They put him at 11. You would just assume spiral power is 11 dimensional and that's it. Especially since that's the amount of spatial dimensions Anti-Spiral created within his labyrinth. You would cap it at 11. You would not cap it at infinite dimensionality, which is what that battle argued.
Yeah. The problem with this argument is the way you go about it is you would say that he would get, through willpower amp, he'd be getting vaguely stronger than 11th dimensional, but just higher into 11th dimensional, because you can't prove that he's jumping infinities.
Yes. And it would just make more sense to assume that spiral power would just be 11th dimensional. Since Anti-Spiral,
because the problem,
I believe, also uses spiral energy.
Because the problem is as well, and they failed to catch this, you make that argument for Simone, you can make the exact same argument for Kyle.
Yes. So overall,
it's as we said when we first watched this. This was the highway robbery.
Yes, there was no reason to believe that Kyle should have lost this one. Also, I still fucking hate Simone as a character after everything I learned during that battle. But let's move on to the next one, because I don't think we.
Just before we stop. Yes, we both disagree with the outcome. We think Kyle should have won.
Yeah, Kyle should have taken it. Even if you believe Simone's higher limits would eclipse Kyle, which again,
Kyle should have won from the beginning. He's dimensionally higher.
Yeah. And
they already scaled them the same in terms of speed. So if Kyle taps him, he just wins.
Yes. So let's move on. Alright, so the next one was Wile E. Coyote versus
Tomcat.
Yes.
So personally, I think this fight was very charming and very good. I do think they got the result right. But a lot of Tom's scaling seemed to be trying to give him as much benefit of the doubt as possible to put him as close to Wily as possible.
Yeah, Tom was given a lot more benefits of the doubt than one would expect. To be honest, when the matchup was first announced, I didn't understand the logic behind it, and I still think the matchup isn't very good, even on a conceptual level. But this was a matchup where the benefit of the doubt was given to one character in order to give them the best possible argument against a character that they, I'm going to be honest, were kind of chosen to lose from the start. I don't think anyone came into this believing that
No one thought Tom was winning this.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure what the logic. Because again, this matchup just makes no fucking sense. Like I don't even know what the thematics behind it were to justify it. So the results were ultimately correct. Although I will say I was.
Would you have preferred if it was Sylvester instead?
Yeah, because at least then it's two cats going at it, and I feel like they would have a closer. Let's put it this way: Tom is a house cat who does regular, ordinary stuff more often than not. Wile E. Coyote is usually buying cannons and missiles and shit. You know, not exactly your standard house cat arsenal.
Understandable. There's not really much to talk about this. Like, I think they got the result right. I think it was a fun fight. There's not really.
There was one thing I hated about this fight that I will touch on. They had this whole narrative rules for Wile E. Coyote where they were like, oh, we have to adhere to these narrative rules given by the creator for Wile E. Coyote. And it's
No, you
like,
don't.
no, you don't. Why do you keep bringing this up? That's stupid. Stop being stupid, Death Battle. But yeah, no, overall, good fight. Fun episode overall. All right. So the next one is Miles versus Deku, and if I remember correctly, you did not like this animation for the fight.
No, I found it a bit clunky from memory.
Yes, I was gonna say because I remember that was a piece of contention between you and other people. So breaking it down, their reasonings are fine. It's hard to say if their Miles scaling is accurate because comic book characters have some really stupid scaling. Because I think at the time Miles was in this death battle, Miles was also fighting Hercules in the comics, if I remember correctly. Because I guess he was fighting God as like the avatar of the Spider God. They also, for whatever reason, don't upscale Miles to characters like Moreland and stuff, which they mention he fights them, but they don't really talk about how strong those characters would be. So it's a little.
Yeah, this is one of those unfortunate fights where speaking personally, I have no frame of reference for Miles outside of the Spider-Verse movies, and again, I haven't been through My Hero, so I couldn't tell you.
You know, it just occurred to me that there were two My Hero Academia matchups in the same season.
Yeah, the main villain and the main hero won.
Overall, it's fine. The reasons they gave were fine. I wasn't expecting Miles to take it because, you know, he had the audacity of landing on the street against Deku. Just wasn't gonna. He just wasn't gonna win that fight. So, overall, fight was been clunky. I thought the fight was fine, but I definitely could see the issues with it. And the reasoning was fine, based on, like, we're trusting Death Battle with the research on this one. So, take that one as you will. On to the next one. Alright, so Hulk versus Godzilla. I like the animation. I don't think Kyle was a fan of the animation. Were you?
No, I thought it felt a little bit lost, especially when they started doing the death loop because they didn't explain that properly. The other issue, this fight has a big issue, which is Godzilla technically wins multiple times, and this should be a TKO. But what they've done is that they basically made Bruce Banner able to take these particles that he doesn't know and build something for a way for the Hulk to kill him. That shouldn't be allowed with Death Battle's rules.
It feels weird that Death Battle's position for this matchup was they can die an infinite number of times.
It feels like they were giving a massive concession that the Hulk needs multiple respawn times to win. This feels like they said that like Hulk can win given enough time, which is, in my personal opinion, not fair to use. Because it should just be one and done. You either win with what you've got or you don't. You don't get to plan.
It was also the funniest thing in the middle of this death battle going on. Godzilla was fighting the Hulk in the comics of the main universe because they said Godzilla fought Hulk in Elseworld stories. But from what I understand, the current Godzilla versus Hulk or Godzilla versus the Marvel Universe is the main Marvel Universe. I think they confirmed. And not only was Godzilla able to strike fear into the Hulk, he beat the shit out of him. So it was a rather interesting dichotomy going on at that time period. But personally for me, it's not that Banner couldn't figure it out. It's that how many times would that it take for him to build the gauntlet? Like
The problem is how many respawns are you going to allow them to have in a death battle where it's a fight to the death? Because if this is going to be what it is going forward, then does that mean characters who have like multiple lives get multiple chances at the fight? Like,
yeah, and like how does this factor in? Like, how does this factor in characters who come back from the dead? Like, is there no time limit allowed? Like, if it take, because actually, no. They gave Azura a lot of crap for a time limit of reviving.
oh yeah, he should have just been able to come back and continue the fight Kratos.
Yeah, like Kratos should be like an old man when Azura just shows back up, knocks on his door, and beats the shit out of him as an old man.
No, because Ashura can come back like straight away after he dies.
Their argument was that, we didn't touch on it, but their argument was basically just that in a lot of Azura's revivals, it took him a long time to come back, like almost centuries in between.
You don't even have to play the game. You can literally just watch the cutscenes. It's basically a glorified movie. He gets progressively quicker each time.
Yeah, so by the time he would show up at the end, it probably wouldn't take him all that much time to come back. Which again, if Death Battle lets the Hulk and Godzilla keep coming back.
This is kind of one of those problems where they allow this rule for this fight, but it's a rule where it's like, why couldn't this be done for this fight? Because sometimes they'll do this where they'll add stuff to different fights where it will bite them in the ass, like adding Twitter statements for Fall Guys versus the Imposter. But they won't do it for, Ashura Kratos.
It's also worth noting that based on the rules of how Death Battle presented the characters, the Hulk never killed Godzilla because by Death Battle standard, or by Death Battle's presentation, Godzilla was singular point. Whereas the Hulk was killed multiple times in this Death Battle. I don't know. Like at the end of the day, you either like it or you don't. Personally, I wasn't too fond of it. I thought the animation was good, but it's just conflict characters.
This felt like they said Godzilla would win if Hulk doesn't get the respawn, but if you let Bruce Banner add the particles for long enough, he'd figure it out.
Yeah, and like that's fine. Like if you want to say like over time he would win, but at the same time it's like the green.
How much time are you willing to give characters like this? Because like I hope they understand if they ever bring Doomsday back, they better give him the same fucking leeway.
Yeah. Regardless, overall, fine Death Battle. Personally, I'm not too sold on the conclusion of it, but they at least presented like I agree. I believe Banner could figure out how to get rid of Singular Point. I'm not disagreeing with that position. I just don't like the way they presented it within the Death Battle itself, because it just didn't feel very fair to Godzilla.
I think under the rules of what is presented, Godzilla should have won. But if you're going by the metric of, if you were to let them respawn, and if you were to let Banner add the particles, then sure.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, it just feels very much like they just gave a lot of leeway in how they normally do death battles for that one. But let us continue onwards.
All right.
Maka versus Ruby. Kyle, go.
Where do you want me to start?
Well, they gave us 4 categories, so normally we would discuss what Death Battle would say about it, but since Kyle vehemently disagrees across the board with I think everything but powers, because I think he actually agree. Well, no, he doesn't agree with Ruby's. Let's just start with strength and go from there. So they gave Maka scaling to Azura. So go.
So let's start. Let's start with something easy. So I do. They got the result right, but my God, did they do everything possible to try and fuck on Marker for her to lose? Still couldn't, because fucking Ruby's a shit series. So in terms of strength, yeah, they scale her physical strength to cutting, Gopher's attack, which could collapse a mountain. So yeah, she deflected that, which would physically get her higher than anything in Ruby. But on top of that, they scaled her to Ashura. Ashura has scaling that goes all the way back to Fire Force, because he can fight Lord Death, and Lord Death would scale above Shinra Bansho. So, long story short, she would actually have strength nearing like Uni Plus at the least, to like low multi maybe.
All right. And so speed.
Again, like just being. So let's attack one of the things that they said, which is, they gave an arbitrary speed boost to Ruby. They just pulled it out of their ass that she'd be 40 times faster, so she should be over light speed. No. What you would do is you would say that she has light speed reaction, but any power-ups that she gets, you would only say that she's vaguely over light speed. You would not be able to put an exact number. Marker, however, has consistent light speed showings, and again, this is going to be like a main part of this battle, because this is the main reason why they didn't even do a good job. They just like tried to sweep this under the rug, which was trying to not acknowledge Fire Force. Because if you acknowledge Fire Force and you understand where that scales, then this is not even a fight. Like, she would scale to Shinra, and Shinra's entire power, his entire Dollar Burst, is literally just a gigantic, immeasurable speed feat. And people can keep up with him in combat. So, consistently, again, with scale to Death, scale to Ashura, people around chapter 2, I want to say chapter 20 is when Ashura gets released, would be sitting around the immeasurable speed.
Alright. Skill.
This one's going to come down to, what do you consider skill? Because while... How do I put it?
Okay, so they specifically
Ruby is really good.
Scythe skill, so focus on just Scythe.
Ruby is really good with a Scythe. I would say this one would probably be the one that's equal, because both are really good with a Scythe, but it is ultimately like Marco who is using Soul.
Well, so you would disagree with Death Battle's position that Soul is the one using effectively Maka in that regard, based on.
I would, because you need a competent Meister to use a weapon.
Can weapons themselves not manipulate their Meister like the way Death
No.
Battle's implying? Okay, they cannot.
You need a competent Meister to be able to use a weapon to their greatest effect. This is why characters like Stein, who has a soul that can resonate with anyone, is super impressive.
Wasn't Spirit able to basically turn grunts into like high level fighters just by having them wield him during the Moon arc, I believe?
No, as far as I'm aware, Spirit was with Marker and with Stein.
All right, that one might be a memory thing. Then I might be either misremembering or vice versa. But all right, so then you would say that that would be equal. And powers. I
This is
know.
not. This is not even close. Like Marka out hacks Ruby to an absurd degree, and the fact of like the entire thing with Aura, and they don't dive into this enough. Aura is everything to do with the soul in Ruby, including like their semblance.
Yes.
So Marka has multiple ways to either copy her aura and semblance, shut it down, drain her willpower, make it so she doesn't even have the will to fight. She can manipulate stuff on the conceptual level. She can induce madness, and on the defensive side, you have Soul who can mess with Marka's attacks with ultrasonic waves. If he recognizes Ruby's attacks via reading her soul, he can just use the piano inside of their soul to basically shut down every ability. And there's no dust bullet, and there's no way that Ruby is strong enough to be able to cut through the black blood, let alone when she's wearing the black blood dress, which just further increases her durability. This is a fight that was done 10 years too late for anyone to care.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
that was for sure.
it was done way too late for people to care. And the more they waited, the more people realized that this was a fight that was a complete stomp.
Yeah.
Like this was a fight that like you would never be able to convince anyone that Ruby was gonna win. The only way you could is if you've never touched Soul Eater or even heard of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you only watch the anime too, I feel like you could potentially come to that conclusion. The anime doesn't have too much crazy stuff in it. It really depends on how much
No,
you know about Soul
and that's the
Eater.
problem, is that the anime literally stops being canon just before they start getting into a lot of the crazy stuff.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, if you just watch the anime and you just watch Ruby, you might believe that matchup is closer than it actually is. But overall, I think the fight animation. Well, actually, I guess the fight animation. You didn't like that one either, right? I know you were very disappointed with the kill shot in that one in particular.
Yeah, it was very. We didn't want to upset the Ruby fans because they did this with Weiss too. When Weiss died to Mitsuru, is that they didn't
Bullshit.
show a proper kill shot.
Yep. Yep. That is fair.
But outside of that, it's like they were able to rip a really good model for Ruby, but Marka's model is weird.
I'm gonna defend them and just say that Maka's probably not good in 3D. Like, her proportions are a little weird. They could have done a better job. But I don't think Maka was ever gonna look good in 3D, if that makes sense. I don't think Soul Eater
I think
well to that.
they needed a better facial artist to work on the 3D model.
I could see that, but again, I don't think that would have made much of a difference. I just don't think Soul Eater's artwork translates well to a 3D model.
Other than that,
Quickly go over Silver Eyes. I know you really hate the Silver Eyes thing.
right. So they tried to correlate that the Silver Eyes and the Grim are the same as the Madness wavelength. No. So the Grim in Ruby are evil soulless beings. That is all they are, and that's all you know that the Grim are. They are evil and soulless. First of all, the madness is not evil, nor is it soulless. It's not. Fuck off.
No, fuck out.
It's just an emotion.
I don't know about soul. I'll agree with you. It's not soulless, but no, fuck out of here. Literally, everyone who falls to madness becomes fucking evil. It's literally the whole thing about the fucking story. But whatever. Carry on. I'm not gonna get into this right now.
No, it's not. It's not evil. It's never called evil. Um, they are fundamentally two different powers because one comes from emotion and the other one is just a fundamental thing made from the Dragon of Darkness.
Yeah.
Like, it was just one of those things that they gave as a super concession to try and like argue that like she had something.
All right. All right. Well, I personally thought the animation was fine. Actually, so this is one of the few death battles that actually, and I told Kyle about this, but I'll mention this here since we're going over it. It is heavily implied by both Death Battle and I think the Ruby staff, because I think they had like a little hint there that Ruby doesn't stay dead in Death Battle's lore. It's heavily implied.
No, she doesn't, because we were told by somebody else. No, she doesn't.
Well, no, because they have it on Twitter. They have a picture of Maka and Ruby holding each other's weapons after the fight. So Ruby does not
Which
stay
shouldn't
dead.
even be able to be possible. Soul should literally either be too heavy for her to hold, or he should like be burning her because she wouldn't have the soul to resonate with her. Because
Yes.
to hold a weapon, you literally need to be able to be compatible on the soul. Like this is like you can't just pick up a weapon in Soul Eater. You literally have to be. You have to match personality wise, and you have to match soul wavelengths. Because if you fall out of
See.
wavelength with each other, you can hurt the Meister, or you can hurt the weapon.
Yes.
Because they show this perfectly when Blackstar tries to use Soul when they fight Death the Kid.
Yes.
They just became too cumbersome with each other. They could not fight with each other.
Yes. But all right, that was just a fun little nod to the expanded lore of Death Battle. So let's move on to Blade versus Buffy. All right, so 4 categories. Oh boy, oh boy. So let's break down Blade versus Buffy a little bit. The stats. A little strange up in the air for stats. They give it to Buffy, I believe, overall. And that's probably not the worst thing. Blade's more of a down-to-earth hero. He's not really out there fighting cosmic horrors as often as others do. So that didn't matter. Actually, wait, before I get into it too much on stats, the fight. This was actually, I think, the only live-action fight of the season, right?
It is. It is a very good live action fight. It's just very unfortunate that while the Blade actor looked the part, this is not. I am not teasing this man. This man did a fantastic job as playing Blade, but it's such a shame he had such a meek voice.
Yeah, it wasn't the voice.
I'm not voice teasing. That's just my only criticism. Otherwise, he did a fantastic job.
But both of the combatants were very solid representations of the character and very solid choreography and performances. It was a very fun fight to watch.
It was a very good fight.
Yes, it was definitely a good fight. They were professionals. They, again, just great across the board. So, a lot of people had contentions with this one for a number of reasons. Mainly, a lot of Blade fans felt that he was mistreated in this death battle. And
from what we learned about people in our chat who have actually been through Buffy more recently than Zim, apparently they gave a lot of concessions to Buffy and feats to her that they shouldn't have, especially like what was one of them, like figuring out somebody's weakness, but it wasn't even her who figured out the weakness.
Yes, there were a lot of things that either were not as one-to-one or straightforward as Death Battle was implying, or they were just flat out wrong in how they were saying it. Because I think even the Soul one wasn't exactly one-to-one with how Death Battle was arguing it. But that
No. Well, I do think to some regard that they did get this wrong, but it's mostly an after effect of what I've learned from other people, because as far as I'm aware, he has fought like Ghost Rider, so he does scale to like some weird things later on, I suppose, because I'm sure he's done some weird shit in like Midnight Suns and stuff like that.
Yeah, like he's fought against higher level people. But
Oh, that's right. Because he fought what
Zarathos.
was it? Dracula, who scales to Mephisto. Because somebody was telling us about that.
Yes, Dracula scaling is very weird across the board. In terms of his scaling, he can be a high tier at times or like a mid to low tier depending on the comic. But he does have Mephisto scaling if I remember correctly.
Yes, which
But
can get pretty nutty.
which would get way far
The other thing that
higher.
we learned as well, the other thing that we learned as well is they tried to say that Buffy fought a multiverse eating god. And while I don't think that statement is wrong, it's very disingenuous from
Yes.
what we've learned.
Because it's called like the M Scythe or whatever is what I'm gonna call it, the M Scythe. So they point out that the M Scythe can slice through dimensions and stuff of that nature, but other YouTubers have pointed out that is a temporary amp of the weapon. That is not what the weapon can do normally. And the multiversal god in question that she killed would go through one universe at a time and devour them, I think, over time, is I think what we were told.
Yes.
Regardless, it was one at a time. It was not the whole multiverse all at once, which is still good. But if the Scythe was amped when that happened, that one I'm not too sure on. I know the spatial cutting thing, the Scythe had a magical spell cast on it in order to have that property, which isn't normal
I
for the Scythe.
think I think something else too that people brought up was as soon as she got hit by was a man thing because that's what the gun is.
Yes, I think I know what you're talking about.
That she should have been overcome by fear hacks.
Yes, I believe someone did mention there was a fear hack situation that if Buffy could resist it, they didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this one was a matchup that on paper seemed reasonable, but when people more in depth talked about it, people who actually knew the characters, it became very apparent from what we were told that either Blade was given a lot of
Was
downplay
shafted.
or Buffy was given a lot of benefit of the doubts, we'll say.
Because I remember when they were talking about one of Buffy's feats, there were a couple of people in our chat during the time who was very upset that they gave her that strategic feat.
Yes, there were a lot of things people were not too fond of when it came to what Blade and Buffy were given in that death battle. That was one of our more active death battle streams when we went over that one. But the fight was good. The research apparently was not. The verdict seems to have been wrong if you know the characters very well. But overall, I think it was a solid episode.
This
And
is. I'll say, but before we get off this fight, this is a fight where if you look at their research, they got it right. If you start listening. Whoops. If you start listening to what people who know the fight say, they got this fight completely wrong.
yes, and I know it sounds weird to say, but there are some death battles, and it's quite a few of them. It's not just like outliers here and there, where you'll listen to the research in the death battle and you'll come to a different conclusion than what death battle does.
Oh yeah, because there are times where they think that they're providing evidence for one character, but they've just laid it up that the other character should have won.
Yes, but overall, it was a good episode. It was a good episode, regardless of whether or not they got the matchup right. I had a lot of fun watching that fight. It definitely made up for
It was
the
definitely their best live action fight.
yeah, 100%. Okay, okay. So this will be the last death battle we're gonna. Well, I think after we're done talking about this one, we'll briefly talk about Yugi versus Ash because that one we did do a stream on that recently. That one just came out, And that one has a massive Q&A that we would have to go over to do that one justice.
Let's before, well, this is kind of like the main course. Let's get Ash vs Yugi out of the way right now.
Yeah.
That one has so many discrepancies of how the fight could go that either could win, that it's very much up to the individual of how you want to interpret that fight. Let's keep it like that.
Yeah,
Because there were things you can even go, like when we were watching that episode live, not live, well, when we reacted to that episode, when I was talking to a person who had some of the answers to some of my questions, he didn't really have a lot of convincing answers to a lot of my questions.
Yes.
But neither of us have been through that one for either of the characters recent enough to actually like give proper analysis on that, and we'll leave that one at that.
Yes. So
This is the one most people would rather we talk about anyway.
Yes. So I want to start off.
The floor is yours.
I want to start off by saying me and Mangler want to go deeper into this death battle, going over both combatants at a later point. I don't know if that's still going to happen. But since the time of this death battle, a lot of stuff happened that kind of galvanized me to go buy Final Fantasy 16 and start picking clean through all of it. So let's just say I am a lot more well-versed since the live reaction. And oh boy. Woo! The positions they have. Oh man, I knew they gave like Clive a lot of leeway, but sweet Jesus, you have to ignore the entirety of the fucking game to get away with some of the shit they think they can get away with here. It's insane. But let's go. 3 categories, by the way. Even though Dante has vastly superior skill statements to Clive, because Clive fucking has none, unless that battle is going to be like, oh, Clive was trained as a knight when he was a kid, and then was trained as a knight when he was a slave. Yeah, no, Clive has like no skill statements. And if I'm wrong, by all means, send the link or the source for that information. The Japanese lore book for Logos did drop recently, so there is actual new lore that no one has access to out there in the market. I do not have that at the current moment. So if a Japanese person who got Logos or someone else got Logos and they say it's in there, please let me know. I'll be getting it at some point in the future. But
Japanese person has it, and Zim doesn't have it. You could just say that Zim is yellow with envy.
You proud of yourself? So let's start with their stats, because they start off with stats here. They say both Dante and Clive could easily beat up universe-busting threats. Okay, let's break this down. Death Battle does not show this, but they are being fundamentally dishonest, or their standards for a universe construct are much looser than anyone else's I've ever seen. The reason Mundus is given a universal rating, so to speak, is because the creator Hideki Kamiya had a tweet, or has a tweet, I don't know if the tweet's still up these days, there's enough documentation of it being real, that stated that Mundus created the universe, or answered the question of how big Mundus's universe was.
We also have the universal statements of Mundus in several of the art books.
Yes.
Oh,
there is no size.
Actually, that's actually funny, because when they talk about Mundus's universe, they use one of the guidebooks, but they don't use another one of the guidebooks that specifically says that it's infinite darkness.
Yes, they very clearly ignore the information they can have access to, but they decide that the interdimensional rift from Final Fantasy 16 is a universe. The problem with this, and if Death Battle was honest, this would have ended the fight right here and now, is there is no size given for the interdimensional rift. It is never given a proper size. We don't know how big it is. Even if you go with the visuals from the game during that boss fight, you don't see a universe. You see stars and cosmic, fucking colors in the background, but you never get a statement for universe. For all you know, they could just be in a galaxy, and that would still perfectly explain all the visuals. Hell, technically they could just be within multiple solar systems, and it would just be a multi-solar feat, and that would still be just as valid as Death Battle's interpretation of universe. And they don't provide an example otherwise to this, and neither does the fucking game. But, that is Clive at the end of the game who would potentially...
You want to go...
Well,
do you want to go a little bit harder with what you found for Ultima?
Well, are you referencing the idea that it's in Ultima's head and that there's no universes or spaces he's actually created because the art's...
I'm more saying for the fact of, like, not only is it most likely in his head, he most likely didn't even create the thing in his head under his own fucking power. He had to use technology.
Yes, so this gets into a little complication on technology and the way it works from Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16 does have technology, but it also has magic, and it refers to magic as technology. But the problem is that Ultima Civilization and the ancient civilization of mankind were technologically advanced. Ultima used a spaceship to travel the cosmos in order to find the planet. We don't know how he created the interdimensional rift, but the Artstone also is stated to be simulated reality or simulated arenas. And when you practice in the Artstone, it specifically says restart simulation, or no, it says they're virtual spaces for their descriptions. So it's heavily implied that the other areas Ultima created are with technology, because virtual and simulation tend to go hand in hand with more technological terms, and this is supported by the fact that Ultima's race did have advanced technology, given that Origin is a fucking spaceship, but, they don't fucking really talk about
This doesn't help. This doesn't help that it's backed up by the fact of, like, the only other character in the entirety of 16 that you could even assume made a dimension is Omega, and Omega's looks very virtual, like it's from fucking Tron.
Omega's also a fucking robot, which would support the position that it's using technology to create these things rather than not. But there was another problem with this position, which was where Death Battle was very disingenuous across the board. They point out that Mundus, let's assume that Ultima scales to Mundus. In the time Dante has gone through, he has fought in and gotten more powerful than Mundus by a substantial margin. The Mundus cut... So, they actually don't talk about this because, again, they're being incredibly disingenuous with this Death Battle. They use a quote from the DMC2 novel where Dante kills Void Mundus. In DMC1, Dante could not touch Mundus without Sparda. By the time we get to the DMC anime, Dante is able to fight a Mundus-level opponent in base. By the time we get to DMC2's novel, Dante is able to fight... Huh?
Let's be more accurate here. He's not fighting a Mundus-level opponent. He's fighting a Prime Mundus, because the Mundus that he couldn't combat in 1 was still weakened.
Yeah, by the CO and his injuries. But yeah, so that's true. It would technically scale to a stronger Mundus. Or Mundus, whatever you want to call him. Mundus gets beat. So when Dante fights the Mundus in the alternate dimension, who's more powerful than the base version, Dante never gets hit by him and is able to fight him almost casually without Devil Trigger. Then he fights Chen, who's stronger than that Mundus.
Well, I want to point this out too. because like this is a Mundus who is not only has he taken over the human world in the alternate timeline, he has fused with the demon world. This is a dimension that has multiple infinities inside of it, as shown with the Samsara.
Yes. And then he fights other characters in DMC2 who can force him the Devil Trigger and even Majin form. And then he can fight the Order of the Sword members, who are also exceptionally powerful, even in DMC's world. But even if you assume the position that none of these characters are stronger than Mundus, even though for sure Void Mundus would be stronger, and so would Argosax, and so would a lot of other characters, let's assume they're all equal to Mundus and ignore the statements in the books. By the time Dante gets to Urizen, Urizen is so much more powerful than Dante, he effectively one-shots him. And Dante, by their second encounter, is on his level, and when the point I'm getting at.
Well, I was going to say, this is also a Urizen who is consistently getting amped by blood, who would be stronger than the Urizen that knocked out Dante, and this would be a Nero that could hurt that Urizen, which means that he did better than that Dante that got knocked out.
And this is not including the Fruit Amp, which would make him vastly more powerful.
On top of losing straight away to Virgil, and then by the time he gets to the tree again, like 20 minutes later, he is able to fight on par with a Virgil who dogs on him.
And who would have been stronger because they had merged his demonic half with his human half, which would have made him more powerful and gave him access to Sin DT. The point I'm getting at is even if you believe Clive is universal by the end of his game. Dante is universal casually by the events of DMC2. By the events of DMC5.
Well, then, this is also, if we're not taking into account that if Virgil was healthy and he didn't spend the time fighting Dante and Arkham, it is stated that he could have beaten Mundus, this same Mundus that could have created the universe in 3.
Yeah, that's also true. If you really want to get technical with it, a Prime Dante and Virgil at the end of DMC3 would already be at that level. But the point I'm getting at is that even if you want to be disingenuous and support the position that Dante doesn't get stronger up until 5, the level of power Urizen demonstrates against Dante and the amp Dante has to get to match Fruit Urizen would at bare minimum make Dante vastly stronger than
we are speedrunning these amps. We are speedrunning these amps. Dante in 5 alone gets like 5 or 6 amps throughout the entirety of the game.
Also, we don't even have a time frame for the interdimensional rift being made. If the argument is the visuals Ultima provides during the boss fight, that technically only belongs to the icon form of Ultima, and Clive can only fight that form with Ifrit Risen. So you wouldn't scale it to base Clive. So if you really want to be like direct about it, we would assume Ultima can only create the interdimensional rift in his icon form, and we would not scale base Clive to that because Death Battle does not scale Clive to icon as like 1-to-1. Regardless, even giving Death Battle the most generous interpretation, and we're not through this by any means. We
could go way more into detail about this, but this is just a quick summary.
This is just baseline, not being disingenuous, and being as unfair to Dante as you can possibly be, outside of just saying he's like fucking city level. Dante by DMC5 would be vastly stronger than Clive. There is no reason to believe that Clive's power would be able to be close to his at that point.
Hang
on. Have to mute that. Also, we never see Ultima create a universe on the whim. The interdimensional rift was already made, and again, that was in his icon form. Wouldn't really scale the base.
Oh. And by the way, we're not taking into account of the story of POC that takes place between 3 and 1, and some of the DLCs take place after 5.
Yes. And this is also, so they do give Clive 3.6 times the speed of light, which they do mention narrative later. If you really want to be a dick about it, Clive narratively is stated to only move at light speed once he's in Ifrit's Risen's form. and the feat in question that Clive is performing happens in base, but I'm not going to be a dick about it personally, but you could. They do claim that Dante is able to amp himself to be 11 times the speed of light.
That's a funny thing, is that they accidentally arbitrarily give DT a multiplier.
Yes. Because they say Dante can amp himself with demonic juice to briefly outspeed Clive. But that would be the amount of demonic energy he would get in his devil trigger. Which would mean that Dante would also be getting 11 times stronger if his speed is getting 11 times faster.
Which also means like from where they scale Clive, which is 1 times universal,
yes,
they would be saying that Dante is 11 times in Devil Trigger.
Yes, or at bare minimum, he would be multiple times because they're arguing the speed would increase multiple times over. If you actually want to get technical, they give Dante, 1.29 times the speed of light, and then they claim 11, so it'd be roughly a 10 times multiplier, roughly. But again, Death Battle doesn't give that to AP, because why would they? That would just be correct scaling. Now, regarding precision dodge. Okay, let's talk about precision dodge here for a minute, because precision dodge has never worked. Because there are things you can't dodge in the game. There are also opponents who can hit Clive. Precision dodge does not work on everything. It only works on attacks that are comparable to Clive's speed. If Dante's moving at 11 times the speed of light, which he would be in DT based on what they claim, precision dodge would never work because Clive would never be able to dodge that level of a speed difference.
You know what I realized?
What?
If they say 10 times for Devil Trigger and Sin DT, let's say for the sake of argument, it's also another 10 times on top of that, then he's like 100 times the speed of light.
Yeah, so there would be no scenario where Clive would be able to dodge his attack. So, being completely unfair to Dante, and assuming Death Battle numbers are correct, just with DMC5 alone, the stats should have gone to Dante. Actually insane that Death Battle thought that was a good argument on the table, especially precision dodge, because, that is such a dumbass argument. And I know we haven't been rude this whole time, but that one was, once I learned how precision dodge actually worked, that was awful. Also, regarding abilities, they gave Dante like 5, I think, in this Death Battle. Because I remember we were all caught off guard by how little abilities Dante actually was given for the Death Battle. But regarding the abilities being able to match each other, Dante's sealing ability having a specific location requirement between the human world and the demon world is never stated. And if you believe Dante sealed away Argosax, he was already in the demon world and the connection was already gone by that point.
It's not even that. He can also banish powers with Jackpot, as him and Virgil banished the power of Sparta from Arkham.
Yeah, so that's complete bullshit. Death Battle provides no scam for that. And they also didn't provide a Q&A for this Death Battle to try and argue their reasoning. Actual fucking garbage on that one. Regarding Clive's abilities being more versatile, they do also say that Dante could resist most of Clive's elemental stuff, which is fair, is correct. So let's talk about some of their abilities and some of their counters. So they talk about Shiva being able to freeze time, and Clive is able to do this. What they don't mention is that these have cooldowns that take quite a while in the game. Also, regarding the Brimstone Barrier that would outlast Doppelganger, no it would not. Brimstone disappears in like 3 seconds in game. It has one cutscene where it lasts a little bit of time, but it never really lasts that long in game. Like, I think at best it lasts like 5-7 seconds, maybe, and I'm being generous on that time frame. So, there is no real Clive abilities that would step into that department where Dante would not be able to be with his weapons or the arsenal provided. Clive has good
Well,
abilities.
well,
but
it's
they're
also very
basic.
funny. Well, it's also very funny that they never talk about, the Flame Heart.
They don't talk about the Flame Heart, actually, yeah, but so to be fair, oh man, they left out so much stuff that
Because if they mention the Flame Heart, they basically have to concede that every one of Clive's fucking attacks would literally heal him in Ifrit.
yes, because the Flame Heart, while Dante's in Devil Trigger, he would be healed by every single fire attack that gets hit on him, which would heal him and make Ifrit's attacks completely worthless. But yeah, the abilities, no. Again, they were just being incredibly generous to Clive. Also, regarding him using his icon form versus Devil Trigger, using icon form takes a lot more out of somebody than not. Now, while Clive is better at handling it, we're going to talk about that when we get to stamina, because their final argument was endurance for this death battle. So their argument was that while Dante's super forms could keep up for a decent period of time, they will not last long. But the problem with that is we don't have a point of reference for how much long actually is.
Well, the problem we have is that we have an actual measured time frame of how long he can be in Sin DT, because we have a measured time of how long it takes from Nero to get from the top of the tree to the bottom when they're driving away in Nico's van, and Dante and Virgil are still flying down to the demon world.
In Sin Devil Trigger, which was roughly about an hour, which would be far greater than anything Clive has to offer, which, we're going to talk about what Clive has to offer. So they say there's an emphasis in story and gameplay, that they expend a lot of demonic energy. Keep that in mind. Also, they used non-canon material for the 6 minutes. They directly reference the Netflix anime, and they show the cutscene of the Netflix anime. So they're using the Netflix anime for the 6 minutes, and if they're not using it for the 6 minutes, they should have clarified that position. Also, they say Sin Devil Trigger only lasts a few minutes. Again, the game at the end completely disagrees with that position. So Clive's time in Ifrit Risen isn't limitless either, but it can last longer, fighting for tens of minutes if necessary. So let's talk about time frames. When me and Kyle point out a time frame in DMC5, it's because we're given a time frame. None of Clive's fights have any time frames given, at least as far as I know as of right now. I'm not completely done with the game yet, but I'm a decent chunk of the way through already. And regarding Ifrit lasting for tens of minutes, that is not only never stated, but that is based presumably on the Titan fight, which on my first playthrough, I beat it in roughly under 20 minutes. Devil, one of the better players in our server, claims he was able to beat it at around 15 minutes. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why does that matter? It matters because Clive has no time frames for his fights. And based on the way icons can move and slug each other, there is no reason to believe any of the icon fights last for a substantial amount of time. Whereas Dante has fought him for at least an hour or close to an hour against Urizen. And regarding stamina...
Hey. Sorry to do this to you. I just need to take off. I'm getting a bit sleepy.
Alright, you can take off. I'll finish this off. You're good.
Thank you for letting me join.
No, you good, mate.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. You have yourself a nice night. So, to finish this off, regarding stamina, they mentioned that Dante is going to run out of his healing factor with stamina because Dante will just get more tired as the fight goes on. The problem is that Clive gets exhausted in a lot of his fights. In his first fight with Titan or with Hugo, he is exhausted after like a 10-minute fight against Hugo. And again, 10 minutes is being generous to that fight frame. He also gets tired and knocked out of his icon form during the fight with Odin. And Odin would be far inferior to Dante both speed-wise and power-wise. So no, by no means, and they never mentioned that Clive gets knocked out of his icon form after getting tired or after taking enough damage either. They also mentioned that Dante, as he gets tired, his healing factor drops. This is simply not true. There's no actual statements for it. There's no evidence for it. DMC3 disagrees with that position. Regarding Virgil's regeneration taking years to complete, we don't know how long it took Virgil to come back, because he was alive for longer than what DMC5 implies, because they're implying that Virgil came back during the events of DMC5, but that's never stated. Also, V would decay without constant use of demonic energy. V has no demonic energy. That's why he's decaying throughout. He has very sparse amounts of it, because he's an incomplete being. That's why V's dying. V doesn't use it to regenerate, and they don't provide a scan of him using it to regenerate either, because none exists. Now, if I'm wrong, please correct me on this one. Also, Clive would not get a second win anywhere near fast enough. And regarding the willpower argument that will would make him stronger, that is not that is not how willpower works in Final Fantasy 16, nor is it ever shown to work that way. The fight between Clive and Ultima is Ultima getting beaten down and being forced into submission in a battle of wills at the end of the game. Even if you believe that's an actual fight between them, Clive is not the one struggling on his feet there. Ultima is the one constantly on the back foot and slowly losing it as the fight goes on. So no, they were incredibly generous to Clive. I would actually go just so outright to say that they were lying for Clive, but I'm assuming a lot of other people would argue after death battles. So my position is less that they would be lying about it and more that they would just be incredibly charitable to Clive. But I'm going through Final Fantasy 16 and I'm going to see if Logos has new statements that would change the matchup in any way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, Kyle's not here to sign off with me, but this will be the last death battle we react to of the season in this video. So thank you guys for your time as always. Have a nice day, and I'll see you guys on the next stream or video. Take care, everybody, and you have yourselves a nice night.